Thank you and good evening. Welcome to members of the committee, members of the public and councillors who are in the audience. There's a few people here this evening, which is good, and to anybody watching on the councillors' YouTube, on the council's YouTube channel. It's very good to have everybody with us for this meeting of the Local Plan Subcommittee, Monday 20th of October. I will start with apologies for absence. I have a few. Councillor Butland, who's being substituted by Councillor Schweer. Councillor Coleridge, is being substituted by Councillor Prime, who isn't with us yet, but I hope he will be shortly. Councillor Martin, who's substituted by Councillor Moya Thorogood. Councillor Monday did not appoint a substitute, but has sent apologies, and Councillor Walsh is substituted by Councillor Hooks. That's all the apologies. Declarations of interest. I will do a joint declaration on behalf of all of us for Councillor Michael Staines, District Councillor, who's speaking this evening. Councillor Paul Thorogood, District Councillor, also speaking this evening. Councillor Wendy Taylor, who is speaking on behalf of Councillor Abraham. I think you're reading his statement. So that's joint declarations of interest for those. Does anybody else have any? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In addition to the ones you've mentioned, could I declare that I know Mr Criscione, who I think is due to speak tonight, but I haven't discussed any of the matters on the agenda tonight, so non-registrable interest and will remain in the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yes, I'd like to declare a non-registrable interest in respect of CRESS 2101 and 2108. The landowner, I've discovered he's a landowner, is actually known to me, but not a close associate of mine at all. And obviously I haven't discussed this application with him at all, so I will remain and vote.
Thank you. Any others? Don't see any? No. Okay. Agenda item 3, minutes of previous meetings. We don't yet have the minutes for last Monday's, which was the 13th of October. We will have a look at those at a subsequent meeting. Just before I move on to public question time, just a few things I want to say. There have been a lot of emails today, not just to me, but to others, about tonight's meeting and the fact that some of the reports came through later than the agenda was published. So they came through lunchtime on Friday, about 1 p.m. I think. And there were some emails today expressing concern about that and also asking for the meeting to perhaps be deferred to allow more time. This has been discussed today with me, with senior officers, also with the governance team, in particular with the head of governance. We are quite correct in holding the meeting this evening. I do appreciate the concerns expressed by a number of people about papers coming through later than perhaps we would normally do, although it's not unusual sometimes for reports to come through after the main agenda's been published. I do appreciate that, but there was nothing actually to stop anyone registering to speak by the deadline of noon last Thursday and sort of, thereby booking your place to speak. And then you didn't have to submit your statement of what you were going to say until noon today. So there was nothing to stop people registering to speak. And in terms of the deferral, the timing for this review of the local plan is really, really tight. The timescale is really tight. We absolutely need to submit the draft local plan to the Inspectorate before the end of 2026 and well before the end if possible. And between now and then, we have to finish allocating sites. We have the Regulation 18 consultation, which is a 6-week consultation, and all the feedback from that, which we are expecting to be considerable, has to be assessed by officers and then discussed by this committee. Then we have Regulation 19 consultation, the same process. Then the draft plan has to come to full council before it finally goes to the Inspectorate. There is an awful lot of work to do between now and then, and it does not allow much of any time for deferring, in particular, these meetings. And that's not to say, as I've said, that I don't appreciate, people's concerns about it. And I will also say again, and I'm happy to say this as many times as people feel is necessary, this is still a really early stage. These are draft allocations. Any decisions that this committee has made over the last few months and may make tonight or in the next few weeks, they are draft allocations. They're not set in stone, very far from it actually. And we still have the Regulation 18 consultation to come, which will come forward fairly soon. That is the best opportunity that anyone, whether you are a developer, a resident, a parish councillor or a district councillor, that is the best time to register your comments on sites, your objections or your support for them. Because it's those comments that will be taken into account by officers and by this committee and also by the inspector when it comes to examination. So there are two formal consultations, Reg 18 and Reg 19, still to come. So please don't think that, any decisions made over the last few months or tonight, well, that's it, it's a done deal. It really isn't. So I hope that gives some reassurance to people. Councillor Finken, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. In regard to councillors, I've looked at the addressees of the emails from Kim Mayo and the response from Coggeshall Parish Council, and the substitutes have not been informed of those developments. So Councillor Shreer, Councillor Thorogood and Councillor Hooks, for example, have not received that information. And secondly, I think it's very short notice to be sent out something like the spatial strategy and other documentation at a very late stage when we have other meetings and responsibilities during the day. It's impossible to actually get to grips with those kinds of quite complex documents in the short time that we've had available. There are other things I want to say about the way in which Coggeshall Parish Council's objection has been dealt with, but I'll come back to that later if necessary.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finken. I take on board what you're saying, and yes, I'm sorry about substitutes not being included in emails. I hadn't quite clocked that, I'm afraid. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to echo a lot of what Councillor Finken just said. But on the technical point about, and I don't think anyone was asking for the whole of this meeting to be deferred, it was two specific items within it. On the Coggeshall item, when the deadline came for members of the public or parish councils registering to speak, the report for Coggeshall had not been published. Right. Therefore, they didn't know what it said. And that is, as a matter of process, if someone's registering, they're registering for a purpose. They knew it was on the agenda, but they didn't know what the report said, and I think that is the problem.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Abbott. I do understand that. I actually had a phone call and subsequently exchanged emails with the Coggeshall Parish Clerk, and my advice to her was, I appreciate that, you haven't seen the report and you haven't seen the additional paperwork. And my advice was, if anybody wishes to speak, register to speak by noon on Thursday, because then you can always withdraw the request to speak if you feel then you don't need to. And you could do that up until today. So I did give her that advice. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I actually echo the previous speakers, because the way I look at it is that nobody would register to speak unless they knew that there was an item on the agenda that they wished to speak to. Otherwise, that would be a hideous situation where every week you could get 100 people asking to speak, but they don't know what they want to speak on because they don't know whether the item's on there. So to be fair, in this instance, I think Coggeshall Parish Council are quite correct.
The only thing I would say to that, Councillor Bowson, is that the Coggeshall item was on the main agenda, which came out when the agenda normally would have done. So the Coggeshall item was on the agenda. I know the extra paperwork in terms of the reports and so on, didn't come out until Friday, but the Coggeshall item was on there to start with. Councillor Cunningham, did you indicate to speak or not? And then, Councillor Bowes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think the point is we knew that the item was on the agenda, but as far as I'm aware, no one knew what the allocation was going to be, or it was going to be a different allocation. So by the time the report has come out on the Friday with a different allocation, what we're now saying is everyone should register to speak, and then irrespective of what the decision is going to be, in the hope that that they've registered and then they just reject. Is that what we're saying now? Because we're getting a situation there which everyone's going to have to register to speak.
No, I think
what the allocation may be.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think this is a slightly unusual situation in that I'll use the Coggeshall site as an example, was on the agenda, which came out when it should have done. The paperwork, which was to follow, I appreciate didn't come out till later, but I think if you had an interest in the Coggeshall site, you saw it on there was nothing to stop you ringing up and at least booking your space. I'm not saying that everybody should register every time. I think this is just a slightly exceptional circumstance. Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate everything that has been said. The concerns raised and the logic and the explanation that you've given. I'm just very, very concerned that the probity of the process must prevail at all costs. A couple of weeks ago, following the difficult decision that was taken on King's Dean, one of the district councillors for the Kelvedon area, who's also the county councillor, went on Facebook and started to suggest that I shouldn't have spoken in the way that I did. What I did was I then took myself directly to the monitoring officer to ensure that I hadn't acted in any way inappropriately and that the process wasn't compromised, and I got that assurance from the monitoring officer. However, if there are real concerns on sensitive issues that in somehow the process is flawed, then I do think we have a problem which we must do everything to reconcile. With regard to the issue of relevant information going to substitutes, do each of the groups appoint a list of substitutes for this committee, or is it more ad hoc? If not, I think there is something, and I appreciate this isn't a council, this is a cabinet subcommittee, so this is at the discretion of the leader. I'm very, very happy to make a representation to the leader that groups do nominate a list of substitutes and that all substitutes are therefore copied into any correspondence regardless of any meeting. I don't see there would be a problem with that. I think that would deal with that issue. But I do have some serious concerns whether the Coggeshall item can progress today, bearing in mind what we've heard and bearing in mind the huge sensitivities in the area.
Councillor Cunningham, thank you very much. Yes, I think with regards to substitutes for this committee, it is, as you say, quite ad hoc. It's not quite as set as it is for planning committee, for example. So, yeah, perhaps we need to take a look at that. Can I just go to Councillor Hooks next, please, and then Councillor Bowers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify that as a substitute, I've received all the emails, sometimes being sent on separately just to the substitutes. The one we haven't received is the one this afternoon from between Kim and the Parish Council.
Clarifying.
So I think it was at 5 o'clock this evening. So substitutes haven't received that one.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman. I think, to be fair to the monitor officer, I think what's probably happened here is the recipients of the email is just basically who the clerk of Coggeshall Parish Council emailed in the first place, and then there's just a reply all, I think, has probably gone. So I think that's probably why it's gone to whoever was at the first point, not that the monitor officer has sort of missed people out, it's just as a response to that email. I think that's probably what's happened.
I think that's probably right.
Thank you.
And just as well, in answer to, I think, point raised by Councillor Cunningham, we have to take advice today on this, and, you know, we are perfectly correct in being able to hold this meeting this evening. And I think if we had said that we were going to defer, and I appreciate not the whole meeting, but defer the item on Coggeshall, we would also then have felt duty bound to confer the other two items as well, 2108 and 2101, because their paperwork for that came through late as well. And that this would all cause us some difficulties with the time scale for allocating sites and for getting through this process. So, that's it. But I do understand the concerns. All right. Okay. Let's move on then, members, to public question time. I would just say, Councillor Staines, who came in a few minutes ago, I've made a joint declaration of interest for all of us because we obviously know you as a district councillor, and also for Councillor Abraham as well. It's very nice to see you. Okay, public question time.
Chairman, I do apologise. I'm sorry, it's very recent. Missed me. Can I go back to declarations of interest?
Yeah.
I think I ought to declare also non-registrable interest. Cabinet Member of Essex County Council for Highways and Transport, bearing in mind they're going to be referred to quite a bit this evening.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah,
Non-registrable
absolutely.
interest.
Okay, that's fine. I have 9 speakers registered this evening. I'm going to call forward very shortly the first 8 because all of those speakers want to speak. The majority of them on 2087, which is the Coggeshall site, and some on the Braintree sites. And Councillor Nikki Joshua, I won't have forgotten about you, but I'm going to call you forward after that, after we've discussed those, because I think you want to talk about the additional housing policies in Kelvedon. So I won't have forgotten about you, but I'll leave you till a bit later. Right, okay, let's make a start then on public questions. And the first speaker I have registered is Bradley Bennett from Coggeshall, who is an objector and wishes to speak on Coggeshall 2087. Mr. Bennett. You have 3 minutes, everybody. I'm going to be fairly strict on that because we've got quite a lot to get through, but I won't cut you off halfway through a sentence, all right? Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Madam Chairwoman and all. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you again this evening. I hope now that all councillors and committee members have now received evidence provided in the form of reports and correspondence from Coggeshall Parish Council. Should you not have access to these or have had time to review this information, it will impact your decision related to this site. In the previous committee meeting, the decision to defer this site to this evening's meeting was specifically made on the premise that the agent for the site would provide detail on how they would improve infrastructure to cater for an additional 500 dwellings and approximately 2,000 people. This has still not been provided in any form. A vision and delivery statement was issued for our review in the middle of last week. This proposal does not detail any infrastructure improvements that would enable the location of an additional 2,000 residents to the village approximately. It is also not clear how 500 dwellings would fit into this plan, with renders proposed in hamlets which appear at view to account for no more than 30 to 40 houses per hamlet. Access to the proposed new site is via 2 new entrances on West Street. No swept analysis or traffic plans are provided. This is because such analysis would deem this site is not feasible for development due to the logistic constraints of this already busy and dangerous road. The report mentions no recent accidents in the locations proposed for the new roads into the development, which is also false. It does not mention the congestion further down West Street into the village, for which a recent accident involved a car crashing into an adjacent listed building dwelling, or 2 recent accidents over the junction of the A120 and West Street, for which 2 separate vehicles have been destroyed. Recent accidents on the A120, which include fatalities, are not mentioned, for which more traffic on this road, and especially to Coggeshall, would increase. In the previous meeting, Councillor Abbott quite rightly asked how many houses were proposed in the previously rejected plan application in 2017. To which 106 was confirmed. The latest proposals detail 500 to 600 dwellings in addition to commercial space, and it would seem logical to proceed with such a proposal, given the previous attempt was denied on grounds of heritage and of the land being deemed, I believe, an area of outstanding natural beauty. A specific planning constraint which still applies. This certainly would be destroyed in terms of this land, with 5 times the destruction and construction work proposed from the previous attempt. The proposal for Coggeshall 287 would increase the population of the village by circa 2,000 to 3,000 people, which would push Coggeshall into more of a town, which due to the size of the area cannot accept more schools, GP surgeries or public service provisions. No plans for any of these provisions have been provided by the agent, and I would say that all schools and GP surgeries are currently at capacity. I'd urge the committee to consider this site is not suitable for allocation. The village has taken its fair share of development over the last few years, in excess of around 30% increase in housing. There is a village consortium that stands ready to propose this development through the courts again, as we care about our community, which I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Bennett. Just before I call the next speaker forward, just welcome Councillor Prime, who's just... That's okay. Do you have any declarations of interest to make? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker I have is Chris Criscione, who's the applicant for Coggeshall 2087. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman and members. Thank you once again for allowing me to speak at this committee. Clearly, we're very pleased to see the change in recommendation from officers following a full review of our proposals. But I want to reassure, and I really do mean this, it's not a recommendation that we take lightly. I want to go over this evening some of the points that I really meant the last time I sat here. Coggeshall is sustainable, close to services and good transport options. You've already accepted this, of course, in allocating other sites locally. As we said before, this has got to be an exercise in looking holistically at what growth you're allowing in Coggeshall to the benefit of local people, rather than, bluntly, what's happening now, which is allocating a load of housing. What could be provided on our site? We're serious about delivering a new surgery. We know there are existing problems with the one that exists already, so allocate it. We know that there is capacity at the primary school. We want to build another primary school, so allocate it. The country park makes up 60% of our proposals and includes the vicarage field, and I'll come back to that. Specialist housing for the elderly and new walking and cycling links. We're here at the moment to explore the art of the possible, so allocate the site, set the infrastructure requirements, and we can deliver those homes and the lasting community benefits that we can see, and that we've put a lot of work into this. There are no showstoppers to prevent us from moving forward as a draft allocation at this very early stage. Our proposals are substantially different from the dismissed appeal site, relied on largely in the last stage and the last review in this process. An independent heritage statement confirms the site can be delivered without undue harm, and having reviewed that evidence, it's clear to see your officers now agree. We've done so much more than many of the other sites in this process to demonstrate how we can mitigate our impacts. And rightly so, genuinely, these are concerns of local people. They're not new, and ultimately it's on us to show, one, that we care, and one, that we want to do this development in the right way. Of course, this is just a start, and we would welcome scrutiny through this process, and hopefully some engagement positively with the community. Beyond planning for health, education, the country park, the neighbourhood plan also sets out some pretty ambitious proposals, what they call their big ideas. Buying the vicarage field, well, we can provide it for free as part of this development and likely give over a load of money for its future maintenance as well. And of course, enhance it by adding a load of open space through the development site. Creating community open space in the village centre is another one of their priorities. Well, of course, we're close to the centre of Coggeshall, and any other land available for this purpose really is not available. Connecting Coggeshall with the wider parish and links to Kelvedon is another one of their priorities. Well, through this development, and unlike before, there is a solution to these connectivity ambitions, and we're ready to explore the way we access the site, the way we access different parts of Coggeshall, the way we access the northern part of the parish itself, whether there's crossings or solutions for the A120. Well, the pressure the council's under, with two more sentences, Chairman, growth is undoubtedly coming to locations like Coggeshall, but this growth can be done well if it delivers real community benefits. I'm really serious about that. I'm 30. I want to be able to look back in 50 years and have a legacy of this type of site that we've delivered here in Coggeshall. So we'll hope you draft allocate the site and continue to allow us to prove to you that this is a site capable of delivering on your ambitions. Apologies for running over, Chairman.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Criscione. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Councillor Joe Brindley from Coggeshall Parish Council, who wishes to speak on the same item. Good evening,
Thank you.
Councillor.
Site 2087, land north of West Street, Coggeshall, was scheduled for consideration at the meeting on the 6th of October. Came with an officer report that acknowledged the range of facilities and available locally and the good transport links, but highlighted the limitations of the site, the pressure it would put on existing services and the adverse effect development would have on heritage assets and landscape character. The report owes much to an earlier planning application involving the same piece of land which was rejected on appeal. The inspector emphasised the absence of urban fringe sprawl and the importance of the verdant break for appreciating the high quality of the Coggeshall Conservation Area. The site itself was designated a valued landscape by the inspector in recognition of the contribution it makes to the natural and local environment. Valued landscapes are protected under the NPPF. The officer's report concluded with a recommendation that not to allocate the site. When we received the agenda for this meeting, we expected the report to remain the same. After all, nothing else has changed, but the report and the recommendation are not the same. The focus has shifted to landscape, questions about the exact position of Protected View 9. These are at best second-order matters. The real issue is the loss of the rural character of Coggeshall and nearly 1,000 years of history. Mr Criscione suggested a possible solution that relies on all the sites in Coggeshall being allocated. The deferral was intended to allow for further exploration of this. Mr Criscione also asked to discuss with the parish council ways that the proposal could be improved, but there wasn't time for this. If all three proposals for Coggeshall went ahead, Coggeshall would be doubled in size. The number of households would increase by almost 50%, and at least 1,000 additional cars would be brought into the village, built for the horse and cart and not for the four-wheel drive. As it is, the only substantive change in the officer's report to justify reversing their previous recommendations is that provision of new facilities would be possible when taking into account other allocations already agreed around Coggeshall. You are being asked to overturn a settled policy for the sake of something that is possible. You should not do this. The very act of postponing the discussion of this site has put greater pressure on the committee to approve it. We appreciate that there's a shortfall because you rejected the recommendations for allocation of Andrewsfield, but the identification of Coggeshall as an alternative is misguided. The obligation to protect the conservation area, the hundreds of listed buildings and the valued landscape will restrict a development that would elsewhere be sustainable and acceptable. You've given me 3 minutes to explain why Coggeshall should be protected. Perhaps the officers could give us 3 minutes of their time to explain why they reversed their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brindley. The next speaker we have is Councillor Wendy Taylor, who is speaking on behalf of Councillor Dennis Abraham, who is District Councillor, one of the councillors for Coggeshall.
With your permission, Councillor Abraham would like to come to
That's
the table.
fine. Yes, that's absolutely fine. Take your time.
Right, yeah. How long have I got? 3 minutes to get there.
Well-
I thought it was 2 days.
No, he's not going to. But
yeah, let's run a raffle. You wouldn't think
it's all right.
jumped out
It's
of
all right.
aeroplane,
It's okay.
would you?
So the statement is being read by Councillor Taylor, and just to say, Councillor Abraham cannot speak as well. I'm very happy for him
No,
to sit
that's
at the
fine.
table, but yeah,
I have told him.
that's fine.
Many times. Thank you.
Okay, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. Sorry about this, folks.
All right. Okay. Don't worry.
Right.
I was going to say we've got all night. We haven't, but we, you know. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Abraham, ward member for Coggeshall, has asked me to read a statement on his behalf. Starting the statement, As a ward member, I support the officers' recommendations of the 6th of October not to allocate this site and concur with the comments issues raised by the Parish Council contained in today's report. I would also agree with the officers' report of the 6th, which states that the proposal would have a more intense urbanisation effect on landscape and character of the area due to increased volume and size of the development. Addressing some of the points in today's report. In paragraph 3.47, while the officers note the benefits of creating open spaces and heritage trails for the 600 houses, this will be at the cost of enclosing a greenfield area, loss of agricultural use, loss of open nature and views of the site, which are valued by the community. Paragraph 3.49 mentions that the proposal represents a village extension more than a new settlement. However, combining the 3 new sites already in the local plan and the 2 new sites allocated this July gives a total of 735 new houses, a level of development of undue scale. Will the proposed on-site infrastructure be sufficient and deliverable? Has the pressure of the extra 600 houses been factored into our community services, in particular secondary school provision, water and drainage? How will the extra traffic be managed? Paragraph 3.39 states there will be 2 access points from this site onto West Street, which is already very busy. Will the dangerous junctions from Coggeshall onto the A120 cope, especially with no plans or funding to expand the A120? We must also remember that in 2017, an appeal on part of the site was dismissed on heritage, conservation and landscape grounds. This current proposal is 6 times larger than the 2017 application. So in summary, allocating yet a further 600 houses would represent a substantial extension of a compact village and, given the historic nature of Coggeshall's built environment, this would be disproportionate in scale. It would undermine the neighbourhood plan's green buffer, and there does not appear to have been a highway implications assessment along West Street or the A120 junctions. We hope that the members will endorse the original officer recommendation of the 6th of October to not allocate this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Abraham. Very clear statement. Thank you. It's all right. Take your time getting back to your seat.
No, I'm due to go to the A12, so I must be careful.
Very good. Right. Next speaker is Councillor Michael Staines, District Councillor, who's speaking on the Coggeshall site, also on 2101 and 2108, which is the the 2 Braintree crossing sites. Thank you, Councillor Staines.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. We all chuckle at Galley's Corner, nicknamed Cholesterol Corner, don't we? But the cumulative impact of current local plan, appeal wins and allocated local plan review sites without mitigating infrastructure increases the risk that Braintree gets a new nickname, Queues Likely, based on the growing number of signs with this motto popping up around the town. This local plan review can overrule neighbourhood plans, and this committee can allocate any land for any development on a simple show of hands. This can be really tough for parishes and their volunteer neighbourhood plan groups that detail where and how their communities see development to meet local needs, contribute beyond their scale to housing targets and deliver sustainable growth, all generated with resident consent over many months and conclude with a local vote. Imagine. Now, we all want to know, how could thousands of new houses along the A120 fix our congestion issues? Well, last Thursday, CRES 2108 was supplemented with an illustration of a much bigger cholesterol corner. But this plan was so fantastical that officers were able to quickly reconfirm its unsuitability for 4,250 houses. In contrast, CRES 2101, recommended for taking 2,700 houses, made no attempt to mitigate any new congestion to Cholesterol Corner or Marks Farm, but has been re-recommended. even as this urban extension to Kews Likely Town Centre is separated by 4 lanes of traffic and country lanes. The officer recommendation not to allocate 600 houses to Coggeshall 2087 was not debated but instead deferred to assess highways network impact. In a U-turn, officers now recommend allocating 600 houses in a longer report which includes detailed and robust parish council objections but nothing on highways impact, despite this being the only reason approved for a deferred decision. The 2 sentences added to the original para 3.62 can best be summarised as folks from the 600 new houses can walk or cycle to Coggeshall Centre to meet their day-to-day needs. And it totally misses the point, suggesting that this committee may have been misled. Fast forward to new mayor with spatial planning powers, and it's all too easy to see how this local plan review could just as casually be overruled as our district neighbourhood plans, especially with the vigorous and relentless lobbying from the same politicians, promoters, developers and landowners and officers wearing different hats, yet with residents and their elected councillors having less and less influence than today on houses or infrastructure or services. So please, while we have a voice, let's unite to support and uphold our district's considered neighbourhood plans in Cressing and Coggeshall and reject these flawed, opportunistic proposals because they all, like Kingston and Kelvedon, come without a credible infrastructure first plan and will cause enormous and unacceptable harm to existing and new residents and the local economy of Braintree or Kews Likely for years to come. And I'd like to thank all those residents and groups from across the district that have contacted me during this local plan review process so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Paul Thorogood, District Councillor, who is speaking on the same items. Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair. As you know, I formally requested that consideration of the deferred sites COG 2080, West Street Coggeshall and Crest 2101 be deferred from the agenda of tonight's Local Plan Subcommittee. The officer reports for these sites were not published until October the 17th, whereas the agenda was issued on October the 10th. This Council Constitution, access to agenda reports, requires that reports be made publicly available at least 5 clear working days before the meeting. In this instance, that requirement was not met. Furthermore, the reports were released after the deadline for members of the public to register to speak, which meant residents could not make an informed decision about whether to register or prepare comments based on the final officer recommendations. In view of these procedural and fairness concerns, I respectfully requested that these items be deferred to a future meeting to ensure compliance with the Council's constitution and to allow for meaningful public participation. My request was refused. So I have had very little time to go through the reports for Crest 2101 and COG 2087, but I will report back now as best as I can. First of all, I just want to go through policies LPR XX and RLP XX, Strategic Growth Location Kings Dean, which say the site Kings Dean will provide a new road to connect to the A12. This would require a road bridge over the railway and a 4-way roundabout junction on the A12 at Kelvedon. Given that the government cancelled A12 improvements from Marks Tay to Boreham in July this year due to a hole in the transport budget, do officers have a commitment from National Highways for this to happen? If not, the draft plan is already unsound and BDC is repeating the same mistakes it did over the twice failed West Tay Newtown proposals that cost local taxpayers millions of pounds 5 years ago. Moving on to agenda item number 5, Crest 2101, Land East of Braintree. 3.64 says the site would need access to the A120 and it would be important to have the agreement of National Highways for this to take place. Do officers have this agreement? I doubt it. And without a new dual A120 from either Galleys Corner or London Road Braintree to the A12 at Kelvedon, the proposals in Appendix 5 are merely proposing a rearrangement of the deck chairs on the Titanic. They might improve the roundabout, but not the approaches, and will increase the sheer volume of traffic. COG 2087. Now, I have forwarded this to governance, and I think they've sent this on, but I won't have time to finish reading it out. But just to say, 2 weeks ago, planning officers did not recommend allocation of COG 2087, and now they do. What's changed in that time? Section 6 monies from 600 homes don't outweigh the significant harm this development will cause. 600, Section 106 will not bring that much. So anyway, just going through this, as mentioned by Councillor Brindley, this site was the subject of a previous application. As you can see, I haven't had time, but I have forwarded the rest of my submission against West Street. So I hope you've had time to read it and will consider it before you make a decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we did receive it, your full statement. Thank you. Right, next speaker is Councillor Robert Powers from Stystead Parish Councillor, who wishes to speak on 2101 and 2108.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good evening.
Planning officers are recommending CREST 2101, and our statement was written before this new report, so the Parish Council has not had time to discuss and formulate a response. We supported the decision of the committee members taken in October 25th, or 1st of October 2025, to defer the decision on both sites due to the aspect of its effect and impact on Galleys Corner roundabout. But we'd like to take this opportunity to raise concerns we have in respect of the two proposed sites. During the local plan committee on the 15th of August, Cressing 2101 was stated to have a capacity for 3,945 homes. This figure is now 2,490. And for Crest 2108, some 9,000 homes were stated and is now 4,240. Why the difference? Is this because only part of any site is to be developed if it's within the local plan? Because it was stated at a meeting on the 15th of August 2024, agenda item 8, call for sites. It should be noted by members that when they come to decide on allocations, they do not necessarily have to allocate the entirety of a site. We, as a parish council, fully appreciate the desire for additional housing, albeit currently it's target-led rather than based on need. It is accepted that a scaled-back development on either site would be preferable with a clear landscape back between the two parishes of Cressing and Stystead, thus retaining their own separate identities which would otherwise begin to be lost through coalescence. Even if allocated in part, there would still be a concerning creep from Cressing towards Stystead. If the whole or either site were to be developed, this would undoubtedly create greater resilience on Marks Farm roundabout as an additional access point for any development. This already requires remodelling due to the Straits Mill development and additional traffic generated by proposed developments on the eastern side of Halstead. It is noted that a small pocket of land to the north of the A120 opposite Twin Oaks is marked on the map, presumed to be for a prospective roundabout. If any of the sites referred to above were to be allocated in full, an unacceptable urban area would be created within the parish boundary of Stystead, which would be remote from the core village, approximately a mile. So any new infrastructure, service provision and other facilities would be for the benefit of a new developer and not directly for the existing community of Stystead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powers. Thank you. So the final speaker I have just for the moment is Mr. Tim Collis, who is the applicant and wishes to talk on Crest 2101, land east of Braintree. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Tim Collis, a Transport Planner and Regional Director with SLR Consulting. We are working on behalf of L&Q, who are promoting Crest 2101, land east of Braintree, for a residential-led scheme that could deliver approximately 2,500 houses, in addition to education, sports and leisure facilities, retail, employment and significant areas of high-quality parkland and public open space. This site is located immediately adjacent to the east of Braintree, which is the largest and most sustainable settlement within the district. The scheme would provide pedestrian and cycle crossings to encourage future residents to use active travel measures to safely cross the A120 to access and support the existing facilities and services within Braintree, as well as enabling existing residents of Braintree to access additional facilities provided within the scheme. The site is also immediately adjacent to the existing A120 in Galleys Corner. Previously, the preferred realignment of the A120 also incorporated part of the site, and this land would be safeguarded so it could still be delivered in the future. L&Q, through their promotion agreement, also control the land to facilitate improvements at Marks Farm roundabout, and modelling and infrastructure improvements would be incorporated improvements to both Galleys Corner and Marks Farm roundabouts. We are aware of concerns regarding the lack of highway mitigation strategy to support the local plan allocations, and have taken the opportunity to develop a scheme to improve Galleys Corner. Whilst the land east of Braintree is very sustainable and located and ideal for the vision-led approach to minimise traffic impact, it is also unique in being able to accommodate improvements to Galleys Corner. We have developed a scheme that requires land that forms part of the site allocation, which significantly increases capacity to alleviate existing congestion, mitigate the impact from land east of Braintree, and provide additional capacity for local plan growth. We've utilised existing traffic count data to replicate the current conditions and added and distributed proposed trip generation for land east of Braintree, and developed a scheme with additional junction capacity. The elongated signalised roundabout incorporates additional entry and exit lanes on the A120, B1018 and Long Green. The additional length of the circulatory lanes allows the traffic to be managed more efficiently, and signalisation allows the roundabout to be optimised to maximise efficiency. Pedestrian and cycle crossings are incorporated at grade to improve active travel connectivity whilst retaining the subways. The improved roundabout provides an increase in capacity of approximately 50%, of which land east of Braintree would require 15%. The remaining 35% improves the existing situation and provides additional capacity for local plan allocations. This mitigation scheme is an initial option that has been developed, but there are other options that could be designed to provide even greater capacity if required. Further work would be done in conjunction with Essex County Council and National Highways to ensure the scheme at Galleys Corner is fully optimised to meet local plan requirements. Thank you for your time this evening. I hope this information has been useful and will help in determining the suitability and wider infrastructure benefits for the region by including this comprehensive, high-quality, sustainable scheme as a draft allocation with the Regulation 18 of the local plan.
Thank you, Mr. Collis. Thank you. Right, members, that finishes the speakers on those first items that we're about to discuss. So we'll now move on to the presentations. The first one is on Coggeshall 2087, land north of West Street, Coggeshall. I think, Sarah, are you taking this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So on screen now is the local plan sort of proposals map, which shows you the site that we're considering. So the previous report to the committee recommended the site should not be allocated. Following comments from members in the deferral of the matter, officers have reassessed this. Should also bear in mind that the decision not to allocate some of the other sites that were recommended by officers has an impact on the housing trajectory, which the council are required to demonstrate meets the objective housing need in order that the plan can be found sound. And so it does justify reviewing other suitable sites that can deliver sustainable growth. So it's, whilst we come to a decision or as a recommendation of yes or no, there is a sort of planning judgment process that you're weighing up, and when some preferred sites have not been taken forward, then you go back and look at the next tranche, if you like, which is what we've done in this situation. So the report sets out the comments from Coggeshall Parish Council, which had previously been omitted in error, and I do apologise again for that. Paragraph 3.42 of the report highlights the differences between the appeal scheme dismissed in 2017 and this current proposal, which is being put forward through the local plan process. It's also relevant to note that the appeal scheme was considered against a previous version of the NPPF. The NPPF now requires a strong reason for refusing development, and it does no longer contain a reference to valued landscapes. So it can't be concluded that if the appeal process was to be carried out again, it can't be included that you would necessarily reach the same decision because the policy framework has changed. Moving on to the information provided in the call for site submission. So you've got on screen is the illustrative master plan. So as some of the speakers have said, 60% of the sites proposed to be developed, which gives an opportunity for landscape-led development.
This site here shows how key views from the neighbourhood plan have been considered and how areas of public open space will be used to provide a landscape setting when viewed from the village. Next, we have some views taken from the public rights of way, including views which are protected within the Coggeshall neighbourhood plan. So the top view looks towards the site from the northwest. The bottom image looks towards the site from the Essex Way, which lies to the south of West Street. On this slide, the top image looks from the site towards the northwest, and the bottom image is taken from within the site and is to the east of footpath 1772. The submission has been supported by a landscape assessment and also a heritage assessment. Both of these documents set out a number of principles for developing the site, which would assist in mitigating adverse impacts. The Council's own local plan evidence base has included a landscape assessment and will include a heritage assessment to assist in informing the refining of policy wording as the local plan process progresses. However, at this time, there's no reason in principle why the site could not deliver the quantum of development that's suggested. In terms of comments from Highways, as explained last week, the evidence base for the local plan is at a stage where spatial options are being tested in terms of accessibility. So in terms of growth in Coggeshall, this is typically considered to score comparatively better due to its location on the strategic road network, and is therefore an option that should be explored further for inclusion in the draft Regulation 18 draft plan. Overall, the proximity to a key service village means that the site is one of the more sustainable options for growth. Potential benefits to enhance facilities such as schools and GP provision will be explored through the Regulation 18 consultation when ECC, as the Education Authority, and the ICB will advise of their requirements. In conclusion, officers are recommending this site be allocated within the draft local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Right. Members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the small sites process was generally very good, but I think we've got some of our wheels stuck in the mud a bit on the larger sites. I just wanted to say a few words about that. The officer said that some members had asked for this to come back. I don't think it's out of place to say that those members were also the ones who said they knew the applicant. Now, Councillor Cunningham has not said what his relationship is with the applicant, only that he knows the applicant. I believe I know what the relationship is. He also referred to comments by Councillor Thorogood on social media about his a previous discussion. I also asked officers about that and I haven't had a reply yet. I won't say any more on that yet, but we are looking into that. So the question is, why has this come back? It's come back because three members opposite, I believe, spoke last time and said it should do. But from the local perspective and from planning side, a lot of us are scratching our heads to know what's different other than what the officer just said about numbers. But then there's plenty of other places we could go back to look at numbers if we have to. And Councillor Cunningham was very vociferous in not wanting any development of Rain and any development of west of Braintree, which is curious because he used to bash us up about NIMBYism and not wanting development. So, specific to this site, Coggeshall, as speakers have said, already is taking hundreds of houses. And if we allocate this tonight, the size of the village will approximately double. We also need to look at the cumulative impacts. If we allocate this tonight, and if we allocate Braintree East, doing a few numbers this afternoon, it would mean that roughly 75% of all the housing in the local plan is in 3 district wards: Kelvin and Fearing, Silver End and Cressing, and Coggeshall. They represent roughly 12% of the wards in this district council, and a bit less than that, perhaps 10% of the surface area. Now, I think an inspector is going to be very interested to know why we are putting 3/4 of the growth in approximately 10% of the land area of the district, where we already have very significant issues of cumulative development and traffic. And Coggeshall is a very special place. I don't live that far away from it. I go through it quite frequently. I know a lot of people who live there. As the parish council has said, it has a very high number of listed buildings and heritage assets. 250 individually listed buildings, 8 of which are grade 1 listed. It's an extremely high concentration, even for this district, which has a lot of listed buildings. It doesn't have a train station, so people who wanted to access the railways would have to either go to Braintree or presumably Kelvedon by road. And traffic is a particular issue for Coggeshall. Anyone who knows Coggeshall, and we had this debate about the garden communities and jokes about flying trams, how would you get your once every 20-minute buses through the centre of Coggeshall? Well, a similar argument applies to this. Some of the roads in the middle of the village are one-way working. Vehicles can't pass each other. So if we double the size of the village, we can approximately suggest we're going to probably be double the size of the internal traffic. And I never buy these arguments from developers that everyone's going to walk or cycle. Love it if they would, but unfortunately they're not. And we're also, in the context of cumulative impact, talking about the A120. There is no proposal to dual the A120. So all of the extra traffic from this development, all the other developments in the area are going to, some of it, a proportion of it, is going to be using the A120. So, in summary, Madam Chairman, I don't really understand why this has come back, and I think more investigation needs to be done on that. But in terms of the site itself, it is wholly unsuitable for this level of development, and I shall be voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Somebody? Councillor Cunningham?
Madam Chairman, I'll hold any further comments about the current site and let the debate progress somewhat. But I would just like to reflect that actually this local plan refresh process, up to this evening, has been done in a spirit of friendly cross-party cooperation. The leader of the council has offered many places on this subcommittee to the opposition groups to ensure all opposition groups are appropriately represented. It's been based on substance and issues. Of course, there's passions and concerns that understandably inform commentary in these meetings. It's very sad this evening that we've regressed to the situation, and Councillor Abbott smirks, where certain members of the largest opposition group on this council have decided to play the man or the person rather than the ball. Events in 2016, from the 2016 up to 2020, we saw a lot of that, and a lot of pretty intense character assassination. I'm very happy, Madam Chairman, to explain my relationship with Councillor Mr Criscione, who is indeed actually a councillor of Uttlesford District Council. And then I'm very happy to take advice from the government's officer this evening, or if the meeting has to adjourn to take further advice, so be it. Councillor Criscione is a councillor in the district of Uttlesford. I understand he was elected in 2019 to the district of Uttlesford, and I supported the work of Saffron Walden Conservative Association. Madam Chairman, I've supported the work of a lot of Conservative associations over the best part of 17 years. I know a lot of councillors from different authorities. I know a lot of Conservative ones, Madam Chairman, and you know I know a lot of Liberal Democrats, and I know a lot of Labour councillors as well. And they do different jobs. I have not had one conversation with Councillor Criscione on planning matters. In fact, he will probably attest to emails not being returned and messages not being returned. Because, as I said at the beginning, this process has to be beyond reproach. I'm very keen on that. When there was issues raised by the Kelvedon Against Urban Sprawl campaign group, raised by Councillor Thorogood, sort of innuendo, I noticed he didn't choose to criticise the mover of that motion, who has also declared political interest in that area. I note he didn't criticise that member. I asked the monitoring officer to investigate. And I got the response from the monitoring officer that there wasn't an issue. So, Madam Chairman, again, I take her advice whether you would like me to continue, but I hope that clarifies, and I'm deeply saddened that Councillor Abbott and Councillor Thorogood should take the conversation to this level.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. I accept the explanation as it stands, and I agree. I'll come in a moment. These discussions at this point have been extremely friendly and practical, and it's been, I think, a very, all the meetings have been extremely good. So I think it would, as far as I'm concerned, be a shame if they became overly political all of a sudden. From what I can remember, I think correctly, these 3 sites were deferred at the last meeting, subject to some additional information coming forward. That deferral was moved by Councillor Schwer, I think, seconded by Councillor Butland, and I know Councillor Cunningham spoke as well and said, and the feeling was that the sites merited some further investigation. That was that. So that's why they've come back. Councillor Bowes-Flint, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on a point of order, really. I too am saddened by the take that Councillor Abbott has taken on this, that he's reached those levels. He sat there and just accused 3 members over there. Without naming all of them, he's named 1. There's 7 of us sitting here, so members of the public and members watching are sitting there thinking, which ones are they? And I don't think that was necessary to do that whatsoever. And Councillor Abbott needs to reflect on what that is, because, to be fair, this has all been very fair. To make it political is completely the wrong meanings of a local plan subcommittee. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. I absolutely agree. And I think we should absolutely, I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Abbott, I think we should try and stick to what we're here to do, which is to discuss the merits of sites and whether or not they should be allocated. Councillor Abbott, I'll let you come back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Cunningham has done what I suggested he should do, and I give him credit for doing so. I think the public like to know, if a member has an interest, what it is. And now he's explained what it is. And I have absolutely no doubt that if the boot was on the other foot, members opposite would be saying, Councillor Abbott knows the Green councillor sitting there who's making a representation. And for him to also to say that things were said during the last local plan process, they certainly were on all sides. But he's done what I suggested he should do. Everyone now knows what the relationship is.
Okay, fine. Can we draw a line under that part of it then, and now just concentrate on the job in hand? Councillor Finken.
Yes, I won't be pursuing that particular argument.
Jolly good.
Keep well out of it. I think the main thing that we decided to defer for was extra information about the site and the suitability of it, and particularly on the transport side. And I'm really wondering whether we have received sufficient extra information to be able to make a decision. The advice has changed, but have we received as much information as we expected when we decided to defer at the previous meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Finken. I think I'll let Sarah come back on that one.
So as I set out last week, when I talked through what highways could do, in essence, they are giving us at the moment testing of spatial options in terms of accessibility. That's the first point. They then begin modelling of 3 spatial options to do a comparative analysis of basically what the pinch points in the network are. And then finally, they look at mitigation. That's a piece of work that we are expecting by the end of December. So no, I don't have that answer. What I will say is that at the moment, we don't have any reason in transport terms not to consider this site in the way that we have the others. We haven't had that information for any of the sites that have been allocated. And that's right, because the MPPF requires us to sort of make a judgment on the most sustainable locations first and foremost, and then look at what the impact is on the road network. Is it severe, and what mitigation is required? So we're following the MPPF approach. We're working closely with ECC and National Highways on that modelling, and we will have it by the end of the year. So yeah, we're going as far as we can, as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Sarah. Right. But anybody else? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have sympathy with the speakers this evening around how do we allocate houses within a village location. And I think Councillor Abbott hit the nail on the head around his percentage summary of where these houses are on large sites. But he didn't make the link to most of those next to key service roads and accessibility to train stations and dual carriageways. So we have to take that into account when we're looking at these sites. And to pick up on the point that you made, this is a draft allocation. Just because we insert them into a draft local plan does not mean that these sites will come forward. And during the planning process, if they are submitted and an outline planning, if they are accepted into the draft local plan, and indeed the full local plan, they are still subject to planning law and planning regulation, and the statutory consultees will have their say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Point very well made. All right. Any other members want to speak on this particular site? This is the Coggeshall one. No, in which case, yes, Councillor Abbott.
Move we do not allocate.
Okay, does that find a seconder? Councillor Moy Thorogood. Right, so it's been moved and seconded that we do not allocate the site. Can I have a show of hands?
Sorry, Gemma, could you confirm which site?
Yes, sorry, it's Coggeshall 2087. Land north of West Street, Coggeshall. Just that one, not the others, all right? So it's been moved and seconded that that site is not allocated. Can I have a show of hands on that, please? 5. All right, and thank you. For allocating, sorry, against against that. 1. Okay, and abstentions.
Sorry, can we read that again? Because I'm way up. So against the motion. You're asking.
The motion is to not allocate the site.
And there were 5 for not allocating. So then I need
4 not allocated.
4 not allocated.
Pardon, it was 5. Sorry.
5.
So you're now asking who's against that?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Right. Yes. So that's 2. Okay. And abstentions. 4. Okay. So that motion not to allocate the site has been carried. Apologies for everybody if that was a little confusing. It can be, but that site has not been allocated at this stage. Right. Okay, so we will move on to the next site, which is Crest 2101, land east of Braintree. Sarah, are you doing this? Oh, Alan, sorry, Alan's doing this one.
Thank you very much. So this is Crest 2101, land east of Braintree. It's roughly 153 hectares in site with a potential capacity of around 2,500 dwellings. It's being promoted as a mixed growth location with housing, employment, education, retail, etc. The site is adjacent to Braintree, which is obviously a main town in the current spatial strategy. The site does still have a limited planning history. It is separated from the town by the A120, and some small-scale residential uses are adjacent to the site. The site does contain an ancient woodland, archaeological areas, public rights-of-way, as well as a byway. An area of safeguarded land for the A120 dualling runs through the lower part of the site. Officers do still consider the site to have the potential to be a sustainable location with opportunities to improve local highways infrastructure at Galleys Corner and Marks Farm Roundabout. The area is within the 2 parishes of Bradwell and Cressing, and both parishes object to the proposal. So this proposal, if we look at the next one, shows that if the A120 were to go ahead, the layout could be potentially retained within that. Officers are of the view that the site could has the potential to be developed subject to that potential, that route. And the site promoter has indicated that that potential route would be retained, although further work is still obviously going to be required on that. The promoter has provided us with a diagram showing how Galleys Corner could potentially be improved, and then what this diagram shows is a possible layout which would improve the capacity of the roundabout by about 50%. How it should be noted that the development would probably be unlikely to provide that whole scheme, but all the land required for that scheme is within control of the site promoter. A smaller scheme would likely be needed in the short to medium term to support the site coming forward, and the full scheme shown here would be a longer term aspiration. Officers have spoken with National Highways about the scheme, and National Highways continue to engage with Essex County Council and Jacobs, who are our highways consultants, and they will obviously be able to feed into the evidence base, or highways evidence base, moving forward. So the landscape for the site has previously been identified as a medium sensitivity site with areas of medium to medium low sensitivity. Additional work will be needed around heritage and ecology, and to determine an extent for a green buffer between the site and Ty Green. And the recommendation, I believe, is on page 17. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Right. Members, Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Thorogood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said the first time this came around, I did expect this site to be recommended, but that doesn't detract from the point I made on the last item, which is that, now we haven't put Coggeshall in, the figure is 70% rather than 75% roughly. It's still, the vast majority of development is in we're 2 district wards now. So this came back because we were asking for more information about highways, and I really struggle with what has been proposed, which is why I'll probably be abstaining on this. So that drawing bears no relationship to the drawing we've just been shown for the A120 Route D, which doesn't, I believe, show a roundabout in that location. So the question then is, I think officers are agreeing with that, I think the question then is, so presumably that would all have to be removed to build the A120 Route D. Not that I support the A120 Route D, but I'm just making a technical point that we're being presented effectively with 2 different road schemes. The other point I would make is that I can't believe that in the year 2025 the applicant is making a virtue of saying that that junction would have all of the pedestrian and cycling access at grade. I mean, the number of times in this room, in this chamber, we have discussed the need to get pedestrians and cyclists better over the A120, either over on a bridge or actually more sustainably in an underpass. But all of those crossing points would be where pedestrians and cyclists are supposed to get across. I can't believe that even seriously being suggested at what is now, and what would be, definitely with all this extra development, the busiest road junction in the district. We need to completely separate them out and have them so that they're not in conflict at all. The other point is this would be a traffic light controlled junction. Now, the development of the DIY store also proposes the same thing. One of the speakers, I can't remember which one it said, but it is a bit like rearranging the decks on the Titanic. I mean, the only way we're going to solve Galleys Corner is to separate the through and the local traffic. Just by tinkering around like this with it, we're not going to solve it. And I think if this was built tomorrow, BBC Essex would still be saying at 5 o'clock every evening, there are queues eastbound on the A120 at Galleys Corner. So that for me doesn't solve the problem. The only other point I wanted to raise is, and I was pleased the officers said it about green buffers. I know we've got an item coming up later on green buffers, but I would like that, if this does go forward, to definitely be part of the proposal, and not just for Cressing and Ty Green, but for Bradwell as well, because this does close the gap very significantly to Bradwell. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Moore Thorogood.
I've got 2 questions. What about the A120 new route they were talking about once through Cressy and Kelvedon, I think, a few years ago, and the 2 slip roads off of the A120 there? What's happening with them?
Very good question, I think. Right, Alan.
The Millennium Slips programme is currently unfunded at this time, so it would need to. We would need some development to help provide local infrastructure. The A120 is, if in my personal view, what's on the screen now is probably more likely to happen than the A120 within the life of, or within the plan period. So, yeah, I think that's all I can say on that.
Okay, Councillor Bowes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, as we know, obviously this was one of the items that was deferred from the last, from the previous local plan meeting, for us to sort of, not so much councillors, but for us to go away and get some more information on highways. I know we had a bit of an update at the last meeting about we're probably not going to get a decent update from county highways on this. I think there's been some concerns during this process about the way we've probably done it with highways this time in this local plan process, compared to the previous local plan process when we had highways at a number of meetings and we had better detail on a lot of the schemes at this stage in the process. But we are where we are, how this one's been handled. We've obviously got the work from SLR through the developers. Obviously, the developers have engaged SLR to provide some information. I think alongside, not alongside, but through what Councillor Abbott was sort of saying, I think this is very much a sort of a first attempt. It seems like that, and I think from the speaker in public question time sort of referred to it being like an initial option, and you kind of sort of indicating if you don't like it, we'll go away and try and come up with one that might work. Obviously, I just want to sort of delve deeper into the modelling from SLR and the information, and especially like the practical reserve capacity, the PRC, which is very important in regards when we're looking at the detail for what could be done here. I think first of all, what we've got in front of us from the report doesn't actually give us the detail as is now. It gives us the detail that what would be with the one that we say current traffic flows. We're looking at traffic flows from 2 years ago, from 2023. I'm presuming that's the latest information that is available. But then I think from the report, what it's saying is if we had the levels that we've got now, if we've got the levels we've got now with these improvements, it would give us a 50% improvement. But the 50% improvement, what is that from? Because my understanding from PRCs is if we've got the situation we've got now, the actual PRC will be a negative percentage. And I'm presuming that's what we're looking with. The base point now is a negative PRC, and that's what we're extrapolating the 50% on top of. Now, if we're saying that's a 50% improvement, but then the new allocation, if it is allocated, we are then looking at it being, we're saying 15%, but then we look at the AM and the PM modelling, it's going to be like it's 25, 26% worse in the mornings for what we've got now. Granted, it would have the new scheme put on top of it. But one of the concerns I've got is all this modelling is done from 8 and 9 in the morning. Now, anyone who uses Galleys Corner regularly, like I do, we know it's from probably 7 till 10. We're doing it from laughably 5 till 6 in the evening. We all know it's 4 till 7, but 5 till 6 is not as bad as 6 till 7. You know, the information we're looking at and we're using for the modelling is not worth the paper it's written on. Now, we look at signalisation. Signalisation, we've got, I know it's completely comparing apple with pears, but at the moment we do have a certain amount of signalisation at part-time signals, which actually makes it worse at the moment. So we're going to be told that signalisation is going to make it better, I think is a real concern. The scheme that we're looking at and the information we got, I just don't think it's up to the standard that we need before us this evening to actually provide a positive recommendation on this.
But then I'm also concerned when Alan uses words like, well, this is what's come forward, this is what's going to give us the 50% improvement to what it is now. But then we will need a smaller scheme for the short to medium term. Now, if currently we're looking at a negative PRC, which means basically it's congestion all the time, not all the time, but the majority of the rush hour. But when we're saying it's probably from 2:30 onwards a lot of the times now. So if it's not fit for purpose now, what is going to happen in the short to medium term before we even get a scheme that might actually be able to serve this allocation? I think all those things considered, I just don't. I think we've asked officers to go away to give us the information. I don't believe we've got the information that gives us comfort to well, definitely for me anyway, to support the recommendation before us. The other thing I'd like to also ask about is this green buffer part, because I support keeping a green buffer, but I would like officers, because within the report it's noted that a gap of just under 900 metres would remain between the furthest extent of the Grove location in Crescent Village and 650 metres to Tye Green. Can someone explain to me where that green buffer is at the moment to Tye Green? Because there's absolutely no green buffer in Tye Green now. That's been eroded from many planning applications that have come forward in recent times. If you can actually explain to me where the green buffer is at the moment, where you are planning on remaining it, I would like to know. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Officers, anybody want to come back on some of that?
Yeah, so the extent of the green buffer is set out in the Cressing Neighbourhood Plan. Acknowledge some of it has been lost through planning appeals. The majority of it is actually on the west side of Cressing, which is why we feel it necessary to promote additional green buffer as part of a potential allocation on this site. The information we've provided on highways is what we have been provided. However, the council is obviously still undertaking its own traffic modelling study, and that is just simply not available at this time. And what this scheme does enable us to do is to secure land around Galleys Corner that will enable something to happen in the future.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will just say, in defence of county highways, and that's not something I say very often, they are also doing a traffic modelling, transport modelling for Chelmsford local plan and for Colchester local plan, which was paused earlier in the year and has now got going again. And there may be other local authorities, well, I don't know, but I know they are doing it for those too. So we are a sort of in a queue for modelling and information, right? I mean, it will be forthcoming. We just haven't got the full details right now, but we will have it for the consultation stages. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
With that comment then, perhaps we should have been a bit earlier in requesting it, because we certainly were before, and I feel that we're a bit late to the game ourselves. So I would stick up for highways as well here. I'm not going to go into it, Madam Chairman, because I'd sound like a broken record, but anybody in this room who really knows that roundabout and that area will know that it is not fit for purpose any time of the day now. And I can speak with authority because I use it frequently and sit in the traffic every single day. So for anybody to sit in the room and say that this would work doesn't know the area. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Parker, I think, then I'll come back to Councillor Abbott.
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, the two main issues with this site are coalescence with Cressing and possibly to an extent with Bradwell, which I think could be dealt with through planning application, through the planning process. But obviously the major issue is the road. But I don't really see we can take this ourselves as a committee any further on this detail, because this is not our area of expertise. This is highways. I'm not convinced that this is going to work. I think the problem with the A120, it doesn't really need to end in a in a roundabout, which is what we're still going to be left with. So I think you would help. It was helpful, Sarah, you explaining the stages at which highways get involved, and obviously there is going to be further work as part of the Regulation 18 consultation, where highways will go into much greater detail of what actually they feel can be delivered on these sites. So I'm happy on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just let Sarah first come back, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Abbott.
I note the concerns about the information you're looking for in transport modelling terms. The difficulty is that we can't ask for the modelling until we know what sites are likely to be allocated for growth. So it's a chicken and egg situation here. Officers cannot sort of unilaterally choose which sites might come forward. So that's why we are where we are with the transport modelling, really.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for letting me come back. I just wanted to explore this green buffer bit again. My understanding is that the officers are talking about the green buffer in the neighbourhood plan, and there isn't a district level green buffer. Is that correct?
That's correct. At the time, I think the green buffer was being, the neighbourhood plan came in just after the local plan had been submitted, and I think we'd agreed through the policy that Crescent could define its own green buffer through a neighbourhood plan, and unfortunately the appeal happened, and the inspector decided to ignore the green buffer in the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you for that. So, yeah, the point I'm going to make then is that there are two levels of green buffers, and what I think we're asking for is a district level green buffer, which has more clout. And I raise that particularly because, I'm sorry to say, it's in there again, paragraph 364, where it says the neighbourhood plan is overruled by the local plan, which technically is correct, but it's not that much comfort to parishes who produce neighbourhood plans. So I think that's the point. We need a district level green buffer. I did argue at the last local plan process for that, but BDC said no, and I think that possibly was contributory to that appeal decision. If we'd had a district level green buffer, would we have had the 250 houses? I don't know. But anyway, that's the distinction. So I agree with Councillor Bowes on that.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. As we've said on a number of occasions, none of this is easy, none of this is palatable. When we did debate the King's Dean application a few weeks ago, I think we gave a very clear steer, and I think we almost said it pretty explicitly. I don't think it quite made it onto the old Kelvedon Against Urban Sprawl Facebook page, but we'll have another go, that actually, if you don't have the A12 mitigations, if government don't take notice of that, and they seriously want councils to deliver their housing allocations, it needs to come with the mitigations in terms of the road network there. I see this in the same category. Unless you have some viable solution that doesn't end up in a roundabout at either Galleys Corner or indeed Marks Farm, because if you have a flyover, as Councillor Abbott has alluded to, with the traffic going underneath, that would be fine, but then you're going to create the pile up a little bit further down the road. So unless there are meaningful mitigations for Galleys Corner and to ensure the A120 traffic can travel smoothly when it meets with the A131 at Marks Farm to head east towards Colchester, then frankly these sites should not be submitted in the final local plan refresh. This doesn't cut it. This is nowhere near cutting it. Let's be brutally honest. But we have time. We have the Regulation 18 consultation, an opportunity for the strong voices that we've heard in the area to make representations to that kind. So I think we could allocate this at this stage, bearing in mind, as you said, there are many stages to go, but very much with the strong recommendation that unless you sort out the A120, this is not deliverable. So therefore, Madam Chairman, I'm happy at this stage to move allocation of this site this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Parker, you seconding? Thank you. Right. That has been moved and seconded that we do allocate this site. Can I have a show of hands in favour of that, please? 5 in favour. Against that motion?
1, 2, 3.
3. And abstentions?
1, 2, 3.
3. So that site is allocated. Thank you, members. And just a reminder, as Councillor Cunningham said to everybody, early days. Okay. Thank you, members. Right, we move on to the third site which was deferred, which is Crest 2108, Gateway Park Urban Extension, Braintree. Alan, is this you again?
Yeah, this is me again.
Good.
Yes. So this is Crest 2108, known as Gateway Park Extension. It's around 390 hectares in size. It could accommodate around about 4,000 dwellings. Like Crest 2101, and the site has the potential to help provide local infrastructure improvements at Gallis Corner and the A120. Proposal is for a mixed-use housing scheme with significant levels of landscaping and walkable neighbourhoods, employment, outdoor sports hubs, etc. Again, both parish councils, Cressing and Bradwell, object to the proposal for a number of reasons, including those objections raised under the previous site. Officers are not recommending the wider extent of Crest 218 for allocation. Obviously, we've just allocated part of the site anyway. And but at this time we don't feel that there is a need to add any extensions onto Crest 2101 at this time. I'm aware some papers were circulated in which officers have seen. They included things like a memorandum of understanding from the site promoter, although there were some issues with it, like it not being dated, not signed, and it doesn't include all the parties involved in this site. So there are some concerns about this site being developed in conjunction with Crest 2101. So we are not recommending any additions to the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Right, members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, having just the committee narrowly making the decision on the last one, I'm hoping the committee now agrees with officer recommendation not to allocate this one. This is almost double the size of the one we've just discussed and will completely surround the whole Gallis Corner area in a major urban extension. It would make the maths on my percentage I keep referring to probably take it up to about 90% of the housing being in 2 district wards, which happen to be next to one another. But I think in terms of geography, that helps members. If this was allocated, it would mean there'd be only a 3-mile gap between Kingsdean coming north and Braintree coming south. I mean, it would literally involve the urbanisation of the majority of land in that area. All the points that members have just made about traffic and our worries about whether road infrastructure or other transport infrastructure can be delivered is ×2 for this. So I would hope that we can put this one to bed, at least at this stage of the process, as just being too much. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Anyone else would like to comment? Councillor Parker.
Could I just, I think the officer's comment in the agenda, I wasn't quite understanding what you were saying about, brings into question how much of Crest 2108 can be delivered, and this business about having different promoters. Could you just expand on that, please?
Just before you go, I was going to say we have received, I think all of us, several representations from the promoter of this site, which I have read through. Yeah, sorry, Alan, carry on.
Shouldn't have jumped in, apologies. Yes, so Crest 2101 has been promoted by London and Quadrant. They have, via their agent Stantec. We have met with them. We did ask them about any relation with the promoters of this site, and they indicated that there wasn't a significant relationship going on. Crest 2101 promoters have provided us with sufficient information to demonstrate that they're sort of in control of their site option here. So we're confident that Crest 2101 will come forward as proposed. It's something we've been very keen on to make sure that the sites we are allocating in this plan actually get delivered. We don't want to have a load of sites identified and then they just completely get stalled, or there's some unknown land ownership issue we're unaware of. So it's very important for us to make sure that when we are allocating sites, they can come forward, as promised, to provide the level of development and infrastructure that we expect them to provide. So we haven't had that degree of certainty with CREST 2108. When you compare the two site areas, you can see that CREST 2101 is quite a significant chunk of CREST 2108 as well. And with most of the 2108 site being, as I say, around Cressing, Tye Green Cressing. It's just that it could become apparent as we move on that perhaps there is some more working going on, and then we can reassess, after Regulation 18, if we need to do that. But as it stands at the moment, we don't have the level of confidence that that they could both be delivered in conjunction.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you. Could I just follow up on that? So my understanding that you're not sure that the promoters of 2108 have effectively got control over the whole site. Okay, thank you. You're nodding and telling me that's correct. Okay. I mean, obviously, the correspondence we've had today from the promoter of the site is very much strongly linking this to the ability to deliver much more of an A120 extension. Obviously, that's what they're telling us. And so, I mean, if that was the case, then that would make this obviously a lot more attractive proposal, but I don't suppose we've got sufficient certainty on that.
I think it's safe to say that no one development is going to pay for that sort of road infrastructure. So I think, as I say, land control has been one of the issues with one of our other allocated sites, Hayswood, and that's why it's taken so long for Hayswood to submit its planning application. So it's important that we get deliverability, and I think if the position changes, we can review.
Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No matter what the developer promises, this is not attractive to me. As I have said previously, there is not a field, pasture or any other thing in Cressing that hasn't been put forward for development in this plan. And to be frank with you, the people of Cressing, I am sure, are sick to death of development. If you look at the size of Cressing now to the village that I was born in, then I think you could see a big difference. Nobody is against growth and development because we all need it. We now join on to Braintree. There is nothing in between Cressing and Braintree. So I think that as the local ward member has said, that we've had enough this area and it's about time the north took some more. Thank you. If there's nobody else wishing to speak, I'm quite happy to move it.
Right, so you're moving it's not allocated. Councillor Abbott is seconding. Does anybody else, before I go to the vote, want to comment at all? No? Right, that's been moved and seconded that the site is not allocated. Can I have a show of hands on that, please? Okay, thank you. Against that motion, abstention. Councillor Parker, thank you. Right, so that is carried, that site is not allocated. Right, now, members, we've been going for an hour and 3/4. Before we move on to the next two items, and I know that Sarah also has a wrap-up for us at the end, do you want a 5-minute break? It's been fairly intensive, so I'm quite happy to have a 5-minute break. Yeah? Is that all right? Good. Okay, just 5 minutes, please, if possible. Again, please. All right, okay. Right, thank you, everybody. Good. We will be moving on to agenda item 6, which is additional housing policies. And I have a speaker on this, Councillor Joshua. Thank you so much for your patience and waiting.
Thank you very much and good evening. Kelvedon Parish Council believe that the current text for the policy is not forward-thinking enough, does not consider the impacts and role that the existing communities could play in place shaping, nor consider the existing environment, landscape, habitats within the future design proposals of this scale of development. We have therefore drafted an alternative policy which we would wish the committee to consider. The scale of this proposed development is such that its impacts will be felt far wider than the parish boundary of Kelvedon and possibly wider than this district, as it bounds both Colchester and Malden. As district councillors have all been sent the following wording in its entirety, I don't need to repeat it now. And I also understand that Councillor Abbott has also suggested that the wording for this is deferred to another meeting, and that this gives the very busy planning officers, who obviously have been busy in the last couple of weeks, time to reflect on their policy wording and to consider in greater depth those policy wordings that we have proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, who's presenting this one? Alan?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Okay, so the first policy we've got up, so this is land east of Braintree. It says RPXX because we don't know particularly where it's going to go in the policy list at this time, other than it's going to be within the housing chapter. So each of the policies tend to follow a similar layout. It's previously based on the RLP 17 policy for Hazelwood Farm, which has previously been to examination and past examination. So the policy sets out what we're expecting from the development. So here, 2,500 homes, affordable housing, obviously the road infrastructure improvements in the area and at Galleys Corner, as well as a few other things that we are expecting larger sites to provide. For example, provision of a gypsy and traveller site, as well as structural landscaping. We'd also seek sort of a phased delivery of infrastructure so that the necessary infrastructure is in place as and when it was required. And we also want to encourage that these sites are also developed as a whole, and we don't want to see small parts of these sites ever getting fractured off, because that could compromise the overall delivery of a site as we would like to do. As we would like. Apologies. So that's the first policy. If you want to do comments with each policy. Or?
Yes, I think we'll do it that way. Councillor Bowers-Flint, I think you just got in first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Something that slightly bothers me there is the provision of gypsy and traveller site. Why in this area when there's already 3 sites? We've got the whole of the gypsy provision in this area. Why are we saying that that's acceptable to put another one there? Thank you.
Alan?
Because we haven't had enough. Well, we had one gypsy traveller site submitted for consideration, which obviously doesn't meet our requirement. However, these large-scale strategic sites, they are capable of providing a wide range of housing uses. Yes, there are a lot of gypsy traveller sites in that area, I acknowledge that, but it's these large strategic sites that are the ones that are only really capable of delivering that need for us. Hence, and all of the large sites will have that caveat in there to provide a gypsy and traveller site.
Yep.
Can I come back? Because there are all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't perhaps put all of them in the same area. And I think the police may have something to say about that as well, to be fair, if we're consulting them. Because I know that perhaps at times they struggle now with the close proximity of the sites that we've got. So apart from that line, I agree with the rest, but I can't agree to the whole thing if that's going to be included in there. Thank you.
I'm guessing that certainly the police might have something to say during the consultation, reg consultation stage, and they probably wouldn't be the only people.
Yeah, they are a statutory consultee in this process.
And I accept, Madam Chairman, that it'll be NIMBY because nobody else will want them. Hence, that's why we've got them all there in the first place. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bowers, did you have your hand up? And then Councillor Parker, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of things in regards the point about the significant improvements to Galleys Corner and other road infrastructure in the area. I know we've already had a sort of quite a wide-ranging discussion tonight on this, and I think, not to preempt anything, I think the gist of what I understand what was agreed on was basically if we don't see the right scheme come forward, then we're probably going to get rid of the allocation anyway at the appropriate time. However, what is significant improvements? What would you expect with significant improvements? Is it just a word? It can be interpreted. And also the retention of a route for a future dual A120, because the back of the fag paper thing we saw earlier doesn't really align with, I think Councillor Abbott sort of mentioned in regards previous agreements with potential routes for the A120 and that kind of thing. The significant improvements might not actually align with the retention of a route for a future dual A120. So are we going to keep to this, and how will we square that sort of up at the end?
Square that circle, yes. Okay, yeah. I thought you did, yeah. Alan, yeah.
I think the devil really is in the detail on that one. So we wouldn't want to see this development site completely encapsulate Galleys Corner with housing development. So we need to make sure that there is a space for a potential route to come forward in future. I know we've been talking a lot about sort of Route 4, but we don't know if that would be the final route or anything like that. If the A120 were to come forward, yes, I think they wanted to have the roundabouts in a different place. However, we don't have certainty on that, hence why we've got this alternative, or had the alternative proposal in front of you tonight. So it's sort of, it is options essentially. And if sort of all of a sudden we get an announcement that's favourable for the A120, then we would obviously we would go with that option. But we just don't know at this time.
Councillor Parker.
It is a typo, it's the wrong type of bridle. He knows that. Got the correct type in other policies. But just, I was just wondering whether we should have a specific reference to Marks Farm roundabout in relation to other road infrastructure.
Yeah. Happy to pop that in. We can say Galleys Corner, Marks Farm roundabout, and other road infrastructure in the area if you wish. We have a lot more control as to who was able to occupy those sites, particularly if they were delivered publicly and managed as public sites rather than private sites that are coming forward sort of willy-nilly or on a sort of case-by-case basis. So I think we would have more control on a site that comes forward through a local plan than any other route. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Don't see any. Right, so I think we can move on to the next one, please.
So the next site, this is BOCN 2033. Members allocated this at a previous local plan subcommittee. I just popped a map up just to remind everyone the extent of it. So this policy, the primary aim of this, or the need for this policy is to try and provide improvements to the junction at the A131 at High Garrett and Gosfield Road. It's not a straight housing development, so we haven't tended to do a policy for a site where all we're expecting that site to deliver is just housing. this site is expected to deliver housing, road improvement, and perhaps some sort of local small-scale shops or a little local centre, something like that. Hence the policy wording here. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments? Don't see any. No. Okay.
Right. The next site. This is the site B&M Home Bargains in Braintree Town Centre with the adjacent car park. Now, it's a slightly longer policy on this one, so we are encouraging it to come forward as a mixed-use site for housing and retail, and there are also the usual expectations in terms of financial contributions. This site has got a policy because we do acknowledge the fact it's quite an important entrance into the town, and we also want to seek the retention of retail uses on the site. It also has quite a lot of heritage issues to consider as well, particularly the line of Grade 2 listed buildings on the opposite side of the road to it, and we've also felt necessary to define where make it clear that we would still expect the access to come from Rain Road rather than the other one, Trinovantium Way, I think. Not Trinovantium Way, apologies. Athletic Way. Apologies, forgot the name of the road for a second. Periofit Way, I think that's it. Apologies. So yes, there's so that's what the policy is intended to provide. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Thorogood.
Not happy with this really, because the Rain Road is chock-a-block from 2:30 onwards through to 7 o'clock every evening. So not happy with that at all.
Okay. Right. Yes, well, I think we're all familiar with the traffic problems around there. Okay, no other comments on that? Okay. Right.
Okay, the next site, this is Coggeshall Football Club. So this is to the south of West Street in Coggeshall. The policy here, so the purpose of this allocation was primarily to provide housing to enable the football club to upgrade its premises, hence why we've given its own policy. So we are expecting it to provide all the usual things, and we're also expecting it to provide things, the improved facilities, as well as access into the river, into the town. So yes, through improvements to the river walk, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's that policy.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On this one, I'm not sure why the 3 bullet points above the policy on page 14 are not within the policy, because they're all really important points: walking and cycling routes, connections within development, and then the floodlighting one, which I think is really important. So what this allocation would do is put floodlit sports pitches very close to the valley of the River Blackwater. Now, just by way of example, the new floodlit pitch at North Witham, which is actually in Rivenall Parish, you can see the floodlights from the B1018 at Cressing, and you can see them from Rivenall Church, which is Grade 1 listed. Whenever you put lights on columns high up, unless they're incredibly well screened, they're going to be visible, and they're going to throw light into places where you don't want them. And this is right next to the river valley. So could we not move? I mean, the policy is good. It's just I think it should be in the body of the. Sorry, the text is good. It should be in the body of the text in the policy.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes,
happy to do that.
We can do that. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments on that one? Councillor Thorogood.
What about the waterlogging of the football ground? It used to happen, probably about 20 years ago, when one of my sons played football on that land, and the land was always flooding in Coggeshall. Has that been sorted?
Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, that would have to be sorted out. They're talking about grass pitches as well as having the artificial 5G pitch. I think it's 5G pitches as well. As with any sort of modern development, you'd also be expected to provide sustainable urban drainage systems, that sort of thing. So any flooding would or surface water drainage would be mitigatable, I think.
Okay, right. Okay, moving on.
So, next one is the Housestead sites. So this is the strategic growth areas around Housestead. Apologies. Right. So again, this is a strategic level policy, large site up to 2,500 homes. It does have all the existing or the previously mentioned bullet points in as what you would expect to be provided by a large-scale development. Obviously, the primary purpose of this allocation is to provide the bypass or spine road for Housestead. So that would be that is the main purpose for this allocation existing, and obviously we need to make sure we've secured that in the policy. So if we pop on to the next slide, then we've got some additional things. So we're talking about NHS provision, that sort of thing, and again we've got the caveat. If we spell bridleways correctly, I have to double check that again. So we will, yeah. So this is the policy. Hopefully, we'll provide. The aim is to provide the bypass. Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Bowles-Flint. Sorry.
Yeah, we just need to change the wording in where it says as required by NHS Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board, because after the 31st of March 2026 there will be no such thing. It will be, I think they're calling it the Greater Essex, but it will just be Essex Integrated Care Board. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Who else had their hand up? Councillor Finken and then Councillor Abbott. And Councillor Finken.
I'm a bit concerned about the description of providing a new community. I think it's really important that it's integrated within the town of Housestead and is not seen as a separate community. It doesn't appear in the main policy, I don't think, but it's just the first line of the introduction. And I'm concerned, really, if that becomes the way of thinking about it.
Oh, I see what you mean. The site would expect to provide a new community.
No, I don't want to see a new community link to Housestead. I want to see development which would help to provide the bypass and will provide new dwelling opportunities within Housestead which are part of the town of Housestead. You know, it's a very strong community, Housestead, with lots of great community organisations and facilities and so on, strong community spirit, and any new developments we want to see incorporated into that, not be seen as a separate community.
Can we tweak that?
Yes, we'll happily tweak that.
Yes, right, that's good. Councillor Abbott, I had you next, I think.
Yeah, could we have an additional bullet point that mirrors what we discussed for east of Braintree? That doesn't appear in this one, but it's exactly the same allocation size, which is the bit about opportunities for improving nature and linking them up.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yes, that's fine. Councillor Parker, I think I had you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, does the word secondary school provision, does that include post-16 education? Because there isn't a sixth form in Housestead, I believe, and I think that's one of the problems with Housestead is that children who go on to education after 16 to go elsewhere.
Yeah, we are yet to meet with the Education Authority. We will have to, once we've spoken with them, we will be in a better position to define what sort of secondary provision is required. I would assume it would be an expansion of the existing secondary school, and what that would look like, education would have to let us know, and we would factor that into the policy.
Andrew, can I just come back to, my query really was whether the wording secondary school education goes up to 18?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Apparently not necessarily. So I think perhaps post.
Yes.
We can add a reference to post in there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bowers.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Can I ask a question? Shouldn't it be the provision of land and/or contribution towards the Gypsy and Traveller site, shouldn't that be consistent with Land East of Braintree? Why is the contributions referenced here but not referenced in the other one? Surely it should be one or the other, and it should be consistent right the way through.
That's correct. It should. We are seeking actual sites this time around rather than contributions, so that should be corrected in all of the policies.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anybody else? No. All right. Okay. Yep.
Okay, so okay, so this is the policy for Kingsdean, so it's up to 5,000 new homes. As previous policies is very similar, and we'll obviously roll on your comments about wording from previous bullet points throughout all these policies, so we've got the consistent wording going on there, so we're happy to make sure that happens. This site, in addition to what we're normally expecting, is has got a provision in it for stewardship as well. We thought that was important to include in the policy due to the size of the site and how long it's going to take to develop. So that the stewardship program, so that would be sort of the governance, business planning, and as well as the arrangements for public or how public space and community assets are going to be managed. So if there's any particular comments on that policy as worded, or
I would just say, members, I've got to say, Councillor Joshua's statement was circulated in full, has been circulated to everybody, and I probably don't need to say this, there will be obviously a lot of work to do on this site because it's one of the major sites that we've allocated. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, this afternoon, Madam Chairman, I did ask, I know it's another deferral, but I did suggest this is deferred, and there were two reasons for that, because I thought it was important that we had time to look properly at the Kelvedon submission, which is very different to what's there, for what is a monumental proposal next to the village. But the second thing is, I don't know what's happened to the drafting of this, but I just found so many omissions, and I mean, there's some things are repeated twice, 3 times. Pedestrian cycles repeated. Local and strategic road networks repeated, multifunctional green infrastructures repeated, bridle ways, public rights of way. So there's something going on with the drafting, but also, and I can't believe I'm saying this again, Rivenall Parish Council has been omitted when a substantial chunk of this is in Rivenall Parish. A lot of the industrial land is in Rivenall Parish, so clearly Rivenall Parish Council, which I declare I'm a member of, but this has, I haven't discussed this with them. It's just a matter of geography. Then there's the question of, is it 5,000 new homes? Because the committee also allocated several other adjacent sites, which I think totaled 600 or 700. So do they become part of Kingsdean and go into that number, or are they considered separate? Also, there's no mention of a green buffer, which I think we've agreed we would have. And I think there should be a specific clause about Rivenhall Church, which is Grade 1 listed scheduled ancient monument. You cannot get any higher up. I'm not aware you can get any higher up the scale than that. That could, and as the photograph the officer took from the churchyard, that could have direct views, and vice versa. So I just wonder, can we deal with all of this tonight?
No, I think what officers will confirm this. I think we'll take this one away, given Kelvedon Parish Council's submission and your comments. I think we'll take this one away, and it can come back to a subsequent meeting, and we'll just do a bit of tidying up and sorting out. Is that all right, officers?
Yes, and just to say, Councillor Abbott, I'm very grateful you sent me the wording. I just haven't had time to sort of consider it since then. So yes, I'm happy to take it away and look at it again.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
So, Madam Chairman, just to clarify, this will be deferred. This will be taken away, improved, accuracies dealt with, additionality, and it'll come back to local plan on the 6th of November. Is that our next meeting? I think it is, isn't it?
Probably.
I think that seems a reasonable time frame to get that done, I would have thought, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, okay, good. Right, next one.
Right. So the next site is the Cutthroat Lane car park in Witham. So this is a brownfield site within Witham near the station. We've got an expectation in there for about 10 plus houses plus the usual sorts of contributions. We have added a requirement at the end that the development should be supported by a car park utilisation study for Witham, and that should help demonstrate that there is sufficient parking following the loss of Cutthroat Lane car park. And this scheme is also looking to sort of significantly improve sustainable movement in the area, so through local walking, cycling, that sort of thing. So if any comments on that policy?
Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, this is an important policy, and I've long supported the redevelopment of this site as a brownfield site if it could be done. So totally agree with that last paragraph that that's the caveat, as long as it doesn't cause any further problems for station car parking. My question is around the paragraph underneath the bullet points. I thought we'd agreed that we were taking out the link road from the Morrison's roundabout, but what that wording does is basically put it back in. But what that would also do, if it's the same brick wall I'm thinking of, what that would also do is put a road across the sustainable Cutthroat Lane cyclone pedestrian access, and Albert Road is the existing access for the car park. So I think that whole paragraph is wrong.
Yep.
I would agree, yeah, we'll take that out.
Yeah. Okay, good. Right, that's Councillor Parker.
Yes, I'm pleased to see that additional paragraph at the end. Would it be possible to just make it clear that it's for Witham and Witham Station, so that, because really the issue I think is loss of the car park is whether or not it's going to cause problems for commuters. So if one could just add the words for Witham and Witham Station.
Where did you want to add that in?
Just in the last last line. Okay. Well, not last line, the last paragraph. Development should be supported by car park utilisation for Witham and the station and Witham Station, just to make it clear.
Right. Officers.
I would just highlight again that we can't do any, we don't have the opportunity to do anything about the provision of car parking at Witham Station. So it really should be about whether there's capacity in Witham to justify the loss of parking provision. So it would look more widely. It's just there is this sort of, there's a limitation to it. You know, we can't deliver on other people's land.
I think the point I was just trying to make is that if you're, I don't know how this car park utilisation study is going to work, but you do need to sort of look at who's using that car park and where they're coming from and where else they would go if there wasn't enough. You know, could they go somewhere else? Or?
You generally look at the car parks in Witham, and you'd look at, which would include the station car park because that is in Witham, and then you would look at capacity and you would do a capacity study. So I personally think the wording to single out one car park does, when it covers the whole of Witham, to my mind, sort of doesn't seem to be necessary.
Okay. Right, yeah, fine. We're on self-build, aren't we?
So the next policy is the self-build policy. Previously, previous local plan had a small caveat in one of the housing policies about the need to provide self and custom build. This is a brand new policy. What we are doing is trying to provide self and custom build for sites on development sites of 500 dwellings or more. We will be looking at 4% of dwellings to be as service plots. This is increased from the previous percentage of 2%. This is to reflect likely increase in demand for self-build over the plan period. We are also including some caveats in there as well for what we're expecting, and we are allowing a get-out clause at the end. So if sites aren't being purchased as self-build because there's no demand or or something like that, we wouldn't want to continue to restrict those sites from coming forward, because obviously they would contribute to our overall housing supply. So we wouldn't want to delay delivery on a site if there was no demand for a particular type of self-build in that area. So I think that's really it on that one. If there's...
Councillor Bowles-Flint.
This is not on this particular thing, it's just a general inquiry. Is there still the demand for self-build? There is. Like, because there was a fashion of it at one time, I'm talking about years ago, and I know that some have been allocated in Cressing and they've been built. But I just wondered if there was still because of the cost, I wondered if there was still the desire to do it, that was all.
We are required to still have our self-build register. That's a national requirement. We still have people joining that register, and when self-build plots come forward, we still have to notify them. So yeah, that demand is still out there. Whether or not, I mean, there are some concerns about whether people have registered on multiple different self-build registers. So is that inflating demand? And I think also that's what that 12-month caveat also sort of helps to prevent as well. But yeah, we have to have a self-build register, and we have to provide for houses for people on that register.
Okay. Did anybody else indicate? No. Right. Okay.
Right. Next one, infrastructure and delivery. This is this policy just sets out what we want in terms of infrastructure delivery and impact mitigation. Unfortunately, we don't have our own infrastructure report yet. So in the existing local plan, there is a table accompanying this policy, but that can't be updated at this time until we've finalised all allocations, which I think we will hopefully do, and then we will need to be advised as to the likely infrastructure through the infrastructure study, which each of them will definitely need to be provided, and obviously that will be informed by the Reg 18 consultation as well. So once we've got all the responses back from NHS, education, those sorts of people, then we'll be able to make sure that table is properly updated.
Okay.
Next bit of the policy here as well. So there's a couple of minor wording tweaks to the policy there.
Any comments from anyone? No? Councillor Cunningham.
SIL sounds great in principle, but in practice it's got flaws. Now, I'm sorry, I'm a bit of I keep beating the same old drum, I know, but I used the example in nearby Chelmsford where contributions were taken from Writtle, and that was in one part of their area, and spent in Bewley Park. I'm sure there's no political considerations there at all, but it does open yourself up to those criticisms in terms of where it's spent. Has the procedures, has the rule book, has the protocols of SIL been tightened up a little bit in recent years?
Not really. So I think generally the principle is if you're putting the growth in a certain location, you direct the funding to that location. I thought a lot of the train station stuff had been delivered by HIF funding. I could be wrong with Bewley Park, but you generally would put the infrastructure funding where the growth funding is. So the regs haven't changed. I suppose the only thing I would say, I think we should still consider it. Because if the mayoral SIL, if the mayor comes in with Greater Essex and the mayor decided to adopt SIL first, then anything we do infrastructure-wise would have to, the viability of that would have to take into account mayoral SIL. So there is an element of sequencing to consider with SIL.
Yeah, the problem with SIL is I think Section 106 has its flaws, of course it does, but there's a geographical accountability there that I think gives reassurance, doesn't it? Contributions are locked into a near locality. I have concerns with SIL even on an area as relatively small as but diverse as the Braintree district, let alone a wider unitary area which could in effect stretch from the M11 to Harwich Parkston Quay. And I'm even more concerned if all the decision making of this was assumed by the Greater Mayoralty, because you could have significant housing growth in the north going to pay for infrastructure in the south of the county. I appreciate there's many hurdles to jump through, and we're making recommendations based on information as we know it at this moment in time, and we don't know all the information. I'm very mindful of that. But yes, I mean, in principle, yes, but I think it's just one of those things we have to look at with caution as we go through.
Okay. Right. No other comments on that. So that's the end of that report, isn't it, Alan? Right. So, members, there are 4 recommendations on pages 6 and 7. Recommendation 1, that the housing site allocation policies outlined in Appendix 1 to this report are agreed. I've got quite a long list of amendments and revisions to that, which, if it's all right, I won't try and read out. So will you just take it that officers have noted all of those and the various amendments will be made. Recommendation 2, that the self-bill policy outlined in Appendix 2 is agreed. I think that was fairly straightforward. Recommendation 3, that the delivery and implementation section in Appendix 3 is agreed. And recommendation 4, that any required consequential changes to the local plan review are delegated to the head of planning in consultation with the chairman of the local plan subcommittee. So could I have somebody to move agreement on those recommendations? Councillor Cunningham, and a seconder, Councillor Abbott, and a show of hands, please. Thank you, members. No, it's not unanimous. Against?
On that one?
On that, yes. Yep. Okay, that's fine. Right. Were there any abstentions? No, I think everybody else. Thank you. Right. Okay, so we move on to item 7, Braintree District Local Plan Review, the district's natural environment. And I think, Julie, you're doing that one for us.
Excuse me. Good evening, committee. This chapter contains policies relating to a number of subjects: green infrastructure, biodiversity, landscape, climate change, efficient use of resources, prevention of pollution, flood risk, water drainage, water infrastructure and lighting. A great deal of change has taken place in the policy background concerning these subjects and since the plan was written, and these changes will be continuing. Larger changes include the introduction of biodiversity net gain and the publication of the local nature recovery strategy. And these new policy instruments are still bedding in. Local plans are obliged by government to have regard to the local nature recovery strategy, but not to use it as a reason for refusal. Biodiversity net gain has been applied largely through the development management system. At this stage, it's not clear how policy can best assist, and this is still under consideration. However, current means of protecting biodiversity still does apply. In terms of landscape, authorities are obliged to take a more proactive approach to protecting the special qualities of AONBs, which are now called designated landscapes. And this approach should be taken when considering areas within the setting which affect this designation. And this is relevant because we do border onto the Dedham Vale AONB, of course. There has been a growing awareness also of water scarcity. Water abstractions are being reduced because of the need to protect aquifers, the environment in general, and to be able to manage drought in the future. This means that the water efficiency standard of 110 litres per person per day for new development in the adopted plan needs to be revisited. These issues and those relating to water infrastructure are being investigated through a water cycle study, which is presently being prepared and will be reported at a future date. The Environment Agency has updated its flood risk assessments nationally, and new mapping has been introduced at national level. At the Braintree district level, the strategic flood risk assessments has been drafted and is beginning its review by officers, the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority. The recommended changes contained in this report are based on updated legislation, government guidance and responses from statutory consultees in relation to the issues and options consultation. Further evidence base is awaited and further work needs to be done on several of these policies. It is anticipated that further changes are likely to be proposed in the future. Now, the first policy is LPP 63. Natural environment and green infrastructure. And that is spread over several slides. Or is it? So, Natural England, Essex County Council and the Environment Agency have all made comments relevant to this policy, and it is proposed that the recommendations are approved as set out in the accompanying text.
Okay. Anybody?
Do we want to discuss each policy individually?
Well, I'll have a quick look around the table, I think, and see if there's any comments. No, I can't see anything, so I think you can carry on, Julie.
The next policy is LPP 64, protected sites. Responses which have been received which are relevant to this policy come from Natural England, Essex County Council and the Forestry Commission. I would draw committee's attention to an error in the final line of paragraph 3.27. After the word impacts, the phrase should be added on Essex coast habitat sites. That was omitted.
Okay.
In considering this policy, officers would add that the sites of special scientific interest impact zones are already mapped and are the means by which the need for consultation with Natural England is assessed. It is proposed that the recommendations are approved and set out in the accompanying text.
Right. Okay. All right. No, carry on.
The next policy is LPP 65, tree protection. Responses have been received from Essex County Council, which are relevant to this policy. It is proposed that the recommendation set out in the report is approved as in the accompanying text, and no changes are proposed to this policy.
Okay. Councillor Parker.
I think there is a change, isn't there, that the final paragraph is to be deleted.
Oh, yes.
Which also just led me to ask, do we not have a tree strategy anymore?
Yes, Sarah.
So we do, it's one of the business plan priorities is to update the tree strategy. At the moment, because of the staffing situation in the trees team, the priority is the protocol, which is looking at reviewing all the trees that we've got responsibility for from a safety point of view. We are expecting the arrival of a new landscape services manager at the beginning of December who will have responsibility for developing that tree strategy. So it will be forthcoming in 2026. Yeah.
Can I just ask then, in which case, why is a proposal to delete that paragraph?
This strategy is considered to be out of date, and we are looking at, as Sarah said, looking at replacing it at some point, and therefore it is it is better that we delete that paragraph. There are various references in that strategy which are now out of date, and we feel that it would be we do look, when we're looking at trees in development, we do look at a lot. We do put into practice a lot of the recommendations that are in there, such as dealing with it's basically good arboricultural practices, distance of development from trees, how it integrates into the environment, and trying to retain trees as far as we possibly can.
May I just come back? What I'm trying to get to is, if we are going to be producing a new tree strategy, would we not want to keep a reference to it in this policy?
So I think at the moment we wouldn't want to, but as obviously the local plan being an iterative process, we can review that as the process goes on in line with the development of the tree strategy.
I think my understanding is that when the new member of staff starts in December, one of the priorities is to start work on an updated tree strategy for us. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yes. Okay. Onwards and upwards.
The next policy, LP 66, protection, enhancement, management and monitoring of biodiversity. Responses have been received which are relevant to this policy from Natural England and Essex County Council. Additional text alteration to the report is suggested. Paragraph 3.58 is headed Essex County Council in error. This text should be moved to paragraph 3.58, line 1, directly after LPP 64, where it would read, in a comment on LPP 64, Essex County Council requested that, and then it goes on. Otherwise, it is proposed that the above text alteration and recommendations set out in the report are approved for the reasons in the accompanying text.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Julie.
LPP 67, landscape character and features. Responses have been received relevant to this policy from Natural England and Essex County Council. It is proposed that the recommendations set out in the report are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Councillor Abbott.
Just a typo, Madam Chairman, towards the bottom of the policy on page 70. There's another section to that. Yeah, there it is, in the underlined wording of the for the. Just a typo.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. Yes.
We can correct that,
yes. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Just on paragraph 6 point, is it 6.30? Yes, it's 6.30. I think it is Dedham Vale National Landscape now, isn't it? So I think references to area of outstanding natural beauty should just be replaced with national landscape.
Okay.
That is correct, yes. We will do that.
Okay. Right.
The next policy is green buffers, LPP 68. Responses have been received which are relevant to this policy from the Environment Agency and Essex County Council. It is proposed that the recommendations are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Councillor Abbott, no surprise.
Yeah, a couple of things on this typo. Towards the bottom of page 71, THERE should be THEIR, I believe, in the underlined bit, 636.
Sorry, which paragraph is that?
Oh, yes, I've got it.
Right.
636.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then more of a technical question. The paragraphs 639 and 640. So I think the committee and the officers are agreed we can look at new green buffers, particularly around these strategic growth locations. There is a reference to that in 640. But at what stage do we do that? Should we be doing that now, when we've already draft allocated, or later on? Because as things stand, we've only got the ones that are in the plan now, and obviously Kingston and Braintree East, I think we've agreed are going to need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe last time we did it, so we had the allocations and then the green buffers came in, I think, between Regulation 18 and Regulation 19. So I was expecting it's probably appropriate to do that again. And we can take comments, obviously, from parish councils at Regulation 18 as to where they would like to see the extent of those green buffers.
Okay. And one final point, it's the same point I made previously. They've got a line there about minimise the impact of any external lighting, and then giving this sort of catch-all caveat of safety and security. I would think just say minimise the impact of any external lighting, because the rest of that is really design and planning development issues. It's not, because otherwise you're saying you can do what you like if you can argue those 2 points. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, we officers, we agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Parker?
Just on the green buffers again, would your comment about that being considered between additional green buffers considered between Regulation 18 and Regulation 19, would that apply to an additional green buffers between existing settlements? And I'm thinking about, you mentioned before that you were happy to put a green buffer in between Sturmer and Haverhill.
Yeah, I mean, we can consider that as an option. Obviously, the current strategy doesn't propose any development south of Haverhill, but if there was considered to be a need to have that buffer, I think then we could consider it between Reg 18 and Reg 19.
Okay, good. Right, on to the next one.
LPP 69, protected lanes. Responses have been received from Essex County Council and no recommendations have been proposed.
Councillor Hooks.
In the preamble, though, there's a new word, normally, been inserted, where it says it will not normally be permitted. It's underlined on our version here. But the actual policy is very much, it will not be permitted. So I think in the preamble on the 6.41 paragraph, where we say it will not normally be permitted, gives a developer an inroad to, excuse the pun, to use the protected, to use the protected lane. So can the normally be removed, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, the policy should be consistent with the preamble, so I was quite happy to remove the normally part.
Well spotted. Okay, good.
Policy LPP 70, protecting and enhancing natural resources, minimising pollution and safeguarding from hazards. Responses have been received on this policy, relevant to this policy from Natural England. Further advice from Natural England, just to add that further advice from Natural England was received last week on air quality and protected sites, and any implications for the policy will be considered. It is proposed that the recommendations are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Right, Councillor Parker.
I was just waiting for Councillor Abbott to get in there first, but there's a typo. And the underlined, but it says upon the proposed amendment.
Nearly an apron.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Right, good.
LPP 71, climate change. Responses which are relevant to this policy have been received from Braintree District Corporate Resilience, Historic England, Natural England and Essex County Council. Historic England's comments have been considered in relation to LPP 72, as officers considered this was a better location for the new text. It is proposed that the recommendations on LPP 71 are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Yes, Councillor Abbott.
Well, I was thinking, Madam Chairman, of suspending standing orders for at least 2 hours, so we have a complete rewrite of this policy. I don't think I'll dare that one. In the preamble, there's a few things which I think are out of date. So the second line says, in 2015, global temperatures rose more than 1 degree above pre-industrial levels. Well, that was a decade ago. And they've risen significantly more than that now. And I can provide some references if officers want. Then the next line says, temperatures are predicted to escalate in the future. I don't think that's the right word. Rise further, I would think, is a better phrase.
Yeah.
Then in paragraph 656, it talks about the replacement climate change strategy and action plan 15 to 18 has recently been subject to public consultation. Again, I think that needs updating because obviously that's 7 years ago. And then paragraph 670, there's a reference to fuel poverty in the district in 2019. So I would imagine there's probably more recent data than 2019.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I think there was a whole load of cost of living work done by this authority about 21, 22, straight to mind, yeah. Absolutely. Might be more recent evidence base.
Okay.
We'll take those away.
Right. Yep. Officers will look at that. Okay. Right. Thank you, Julie.
Policy LPP 72, resource efficiency, energy generation and energy efficiency. Responses which are relevant to this policy have been received from Historic England, Anglian Water and Essex County Council. Since the plan was adopted, Historic England has issued an advice note on adapting historic buildings to improve energy and carbon efficiency, and officers support the contribution that sensitive adaptations can make. Such adaptation and conversion relating to historic buildings is not referenced in the adopted policy itself and is only touched on in paragraph 6.61. Therefore, officers have recommended alterations to LPP 72 and supporting text to this effect. The policy also requires that new dwellings meet the optional building regulations requirements of 110 litres per person per day and a lower requirement of 100 litres per person per day has been suggested by Anglian Water and 80 litres per person per day by Essex County Council. Unfortunately, the comments of the Environment Agency on this area regrettably have been omitted from the report in error, and is as follows. They recommend a building regulation optimal requirement of 100 litres per person per day for smaller developments and 80 for larger ones. They also go on to say that Braintree District is in an area of serious water stress, and the plan's proposals have potential to increase abstraction. Evidence suggests that existing abstraction is in some cases at or near to causing ecological damage to water bodies, or may do so if groundwater abstraction does increase. Several wastewater treatment works are at or near maximum permitted discharge capacity, and some may have trouble increasing capacity through conventional means if they have also reached their limits on environmental permits. Foul water flows over permitted limits can cause ecological deterioration to receiving watercourses. For these reasons, the plan must be supported by a water cycle study or integrated water management strategy. Water company planning and investment cycles have been updated since the last water cycle study, and local plan periods don't align with these periods and can sometimes result in a mismatch of infrastructure capacity, which could constrain growth. The Environment Agency consider it important that the water cycle study is capable of being regularly updated as a live document. However, officers view that it's difficult to see how this could be done within the context of local plan procedures and would involve considerable expense. However, it can be given consideration when the water cycle study is received, and the water cycle study will look at the matters that I've just been mentioning. Other proposals relate to ensuring that non-residential development meets the maximum BREEAM standards. Are smart meter ready, require a water resource assessment where significant water use is required. If this proposes water offsetting, it should be done within the same it should be within the same water resource area. The water cycle study is presently under preparation, and consultants have received copies of all relevant issues and options consultation responses. So they've been provided with all of these comments. It is proposed that the recommendations for this policy are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text. But we do recognise that there is a lot more work to be done on this, but we have to wait for the evidence base.
Just before I go any further, I need to move standing orders, members, because we will be going beyond the 3-hour mark at 9:30. So can I have agreement to do that, please? Moved, seconded. Yep, thank you. Thank you very much. Right, okay. Any comments on that policy? Recognising that there is more work to do on it. Right, okay. Thank you, Julie.
Policy LPP 73, Renewable Energy Schemes. Updates to this policy remain under review by officers and will be reported at a later date. The government views renewable energy provision as a priority, and there are also guidance updates relating to battery storage systems. More consultation is needed in relation to fire safety and water use, as water might be needed to be available for safety purposes on sites and is sometimes used in cooling systems. These and other wording changes, including the need to conserve soils and minimise damage to best and most versatile agricultural land, will be reported together. And Responses which are relevant to this policy have been received from the Environment Agency, Anglian Water and Essex County Council, and it is proposed that the recommendations are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Right. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
The next policies, LPP 74, 75 and 76, relate to flood risk and sustainable drainage. Responses relevant to this policy, to these policies, have been received from the Environment Agency, Anglian Water, Essex County Council, Natural England and Braintree District Corporate Resilience. There have been a considerable number of background developments in this area since the policies were written. The Environment Agency has updated its flood risk assessments nationally, as I mentioned before, and new mapping. And we have been using these to inform our site assessments over the past months. Changes have been made to NPPF and policy practice guidance. A new Anglia River Basin Management Plan has been issued. Essex County have published its water strategy and updates to its online sustainable drainage design guides. And the River Pant and Blackwater Restoration Plan have been issued by Essex River Hub. In general, there is a greater appreciation of the multifunctional role that certainly SUDs can play, such as reducing stress on water infrastructure, providing habitat for wildlife or reducing the urban heating effects. And it is intended that wording will be introduced in the future to acknowledge these other benefits. The strategic flood risk assessments will look at the changed policy background and flood risk relating to the sites proposed. And this will inform changes to policies LPP 74, 75 and 76. And the final version will be put before committee as soon as possible. Okay. A few recommendations have been proposed here in anticipation of the SFRA. However, references to the 2012 NPPF have been proposed for updating. It is proposed that the recommendations for these three policies, LPP 74, 75 and 76, are approved for the reasons set out in the accompanying text.
Okay. Right. Everybody okay with that? Good. Fine. I think there's one more to go. External lighting.
LPP 77, external lighting. It is with apologies that I have to inform committee that the report on policy LPP 77, external lighting, was omitted from the report in error. Changes have been made to planning practice guidance since the plan was written, which give more detail on how lighting is to be considered, but much of this is already covered within this policy. Changes include the need to take into account such matters as the purpose of the lighting scheme, whether or not there is a dark sky landscape, impacts on biodiversity and neighbouring uses. Officers consider that the views of the police in this matter should be sought in order to ensure a balanced consideration. Two alterations are proposed to this policy. Number one relates to criteria E. Just checking that you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Government guidance requires that the consideration is given not just to residential properties and their loss of amenity, but consideration should be given to other uses too. It is proposed, therefore, that at the end of the line following, at the end of the last line of the last sentence of E, criteria E, the following is added. Illumination should not result in harm to neighbouring non-residential uses. The second alteration relates to the supporting text, which references to the 2012 NPPF, and this should be updated to the 2024 NPPF. It is proposed that the above recommendations are approved for the reasons just mentioned.
Right, are members happy with that? Get we going? Yep. Okay. All right. Good. Yep. Yes. Thanks, Julie. So, members, the recommendations, there are 13 of them, and you'll be pleased to know I am not going to read through them because they're quite long, from pages 30 to 34 of the agenda. So can I ask that these are accepted along with, moved and seconded, along with the various revisions that we've discussed? Can I have a quick show of hands? Is this right? Yes, thank you, members. Right, good. Thank you, Julie, for that. Right, so agenda item 8, I think this is over to Sarah, probably with a bit of a progress update.
Apologies, I won't keep you that long. Let me just find the right slide. I did about 4 scenarios depending on where the housing sites went tonight. Rather than show you the graph that Alan always shows you, I'm sort of trying to break down in this table what's coming forward within the plan period versus what's coming forward post-plan period, just to show you that it probably feels like we've allocated quite a lot, but only some of that is going to come forward in the plan period. So, for example, with Land East to Braintree, we're only expecting 1350 to come forward in the plan period, although 2,500 homes are allocated. So that sort of means that 5,000 of the homes that have been allocated are coming post 2041, because that's just in terms of trajectory the time it would take to deliver the sites. So the key numbers I'd just highlight for you. The target we're trying to obviously achieve is 1725 is the minimum target, and then 18960 is the target with the 10% buffer. And where we are based on tonight's decision is that we are in excess of the minimum target, so we are 628 above the minimum target, but we are 1,097 below the 10% buffer. We have sought legal advice on whether we could proceed in this situation, and we have been advised that there's a risk of sites being put forward being subject to greater degree of scrutiny, and it's much more likely that the plan would be found unsound without a 10% buffer. As such, officers will recommend that there's a review of all existing sites, as we did for the small sites, to consider the next level of most suitable options for allocation. The team will require more time to do this, and so I would propose that we will review the existing local plan timetable and existing schedule of meetings and provide an update for all members by the end of this week. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I think that makes sense. The legal advice which I have seen is very clear that we do need to have that 10% buffer in order to have something sensible to present to the inspector for examination. So, yeah, we're just going to have a look at the timetable and we will come back by the end of this week.
Can we just make sure that the subs that do attend at the moment are included in that, please, Sarah? Thank you.
Yes, we will make sure. Yes, we may just need to tweak a few meetings and so on and do a revision of some sites. Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to check, is there any planning applications in the pipeline that are not classed as existing in the local plan? So is there liable to be some other numbers that would help, basically, between now and...
Not at the current time. I'd love it if there were, but not at the current time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, sorry, Councillor Hooks.
Thank you. Does it need to be a 10% buffer? Can it be a 5% buffer? Because I thought 5% was the figure that was...
So come back on that.
I did ask the lawyer that 10% is regarded as the minimum.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I'm afraid we can't get away with 5. Okay. All right, so members, if no other comments at all, Councillor Hooks? That's all right.
So when we review, are we looking at just the large strategic sites again, or are we going back to any smaller sites? Are we looking at the whole thing as a whole?
I think I'm probably going to look at everything, to be honest.
Yeah, just to see what we can squeeze out. Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you. That's been a very good meeting tonight. Some quite intense discussions, but I will close it as we have no other business at about 9:38. And thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you all.